Well, good evening. Today is April 17th, 2023. In case you're lost, you're in the Rowan County Commission meeting, and we'll close the door so you can't get out. No, we won't do that. We are glad that you're here with us this evening. It's our honor to have you and to host you this evening. We have a couple things we do always at the beginning of the meeting. The first thing is we're going to have a prayer. We're going to have our chaplain come forward. This is called a solemnizing prayer. That's kind of a legal technical term. And all it means is this prayer is not for you. It's for us. It's for the commissioners because we seek wisdom and we ask our chaplain to come forward. And as we make decisions on behalf of the county, we seek wisdom in doing that so that we're doing the right thing for everybody. And then following that, we'll have a pledge of allegiance. Commissioners, if you'll join me, we'll get started.
Commissioners, let's pray. Lord, we're glad to be here today. We're glad to be at this meeting today, and we're glad to have a prayer for our county commissioners, dear Lord, in behalf of them and the work they do, dear Lord. And we ask you to bless them. We thank you for the time that they've already spent for this meeting tonight, dear Lord. Give them the wisdom they need as we have this meeting tonight, everything be done in the right manner, dear Lord. Pray your blessings upon them in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Chaplain Taylor, as always, for being with us. Commissioners, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda that you know of? Or any, Sarah? Or commissioners, any additions or deletions? All right, hearing none. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as submitted? All right, thank you. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, then we have the consent agenda before us. Motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, we'll move on to the fun part then. Tonight we have some special recognitions. And April, do you have we've got a microphone up here. Commissioners, if you'll join me out front, we might be out there for a little while. Yeah, so if you'll join me out front.
Anybody needs a seat now, there's no problem with you sitting here on the front.
Okay, the first honorees that we have tonight, first thing we want to do is we were notified that there's this honor called the Governor's Volunteer Service Award. That sounds impressive, doesn't it? Let me tell you a little bit about this. The Governor's Volunteer Service Award honors the true spirit of volunteerism by recognizing individuals and groups that make a significant contribution to their community through volunteer service. Any person, group, or entity from the public, nonprofit, and private sector may be nominated for award to this esteemed award. So we had some folks that were nominated for this award, and so we'd like to introduce you to them. They were nominated and then blessed by the governor of North Carolina. And so we're here to present these to them tonight. The first one, if we'll have Shannon Courier come forward. Shannon? Shannon, stand right up here. Well, look at there. Good job. Shannon, Karen Long, is Karen here? Is Karen here? Karen, why don't you come up? Well, you're videoing, unless you want to come up here. Okay. Shannon Courier reported 297 hours with the American Red Cross in 2022, but also worked additional unreported hours as he was on call nearly 24/7, answering dispatch calls and attending to disaster response needs. Shannon has led response teams and participated in critical response efforts during Hurricane Ian. He worked with families to assess damage, open cases, and help find financial assistance. Shannon exemplifies adaptability and dedication to the American Red Cross service mission, and he is committed to ensuring every vulnerable disaster victim gets the help they need. His intimate knowledge of his community and extended community beyond county lines promotes collaboration and communication to help support the Red Cross with the disaster management area of 8 counties, as well as the 51 county region. So thank you, Shannon, for your unwavering commitment to disaster response and community support. Would you like to give Shannon a round of applause? Do we have folks from Red Cross here? Come on forward and yeah, y'all come up here next to Shannon.
All right. Thank you for it.
The next recipient, I'm not sure how to pronounce this name, Patricia PJ, is it PJ? Well, you even brought your own cheering section. That's good. You might get another award for that. Come on up, PJ. We are all fans of PJs. Monica Seaman, is Monica here? Is there anyone really named Monica? See, yeah. Keena, why don't you come on up? Patricia P.J. Ricks is a dedicated member of the Ryan Helping Ministries Board. Over the past 12 years, she has served in various leadership capacities. Her voice in our program services committee has helped us add programs and services to improve outcomes for clients and guests. She plays a critical role in the New Tomorrows program, leading 2 back-to-back classes weekly. In 2011, she began her Health and Hope class that offers our shelter guests an opportunity to learn about our community resources, discuss life's challenges, or delve into complex issues facing our nation. Shortly after that, she began facilitating an advisory council which encourages shelter guests to have a voice in the services provided. For over a decade, PJ has demonstrated a commitment to helping guests navigate life's challenges, ensuring they have a voice at the table and journeying with them as their hopes become reality. It is my great pleasure to recognize PJ for her unwavering dedication and commitment to the Ryan Helping Ministries mission. And if you're anywhere around the county, you usually see PJ there serving, right? Isn't that right? So she is a wonderful volunteer. She's a great example of what volunteerism, and we are all better for having known you. So congratulations to you, okay? I've been notified, the board chair, Mr. McCoy is here. Yeah, why don't you stand and be recognized? Thank you for being here. All right, Rick Hodge. Rick, come forward. So Monica nominated Rick as well. For the past 6 years, Rick Hodge has volunteered as part of the Rowan Helping Ministries administrative team, amassing over 3,200 volunteer hours. You're not even that old. He is on campus 16 to 24 hours a week, supporting the resource development team. A pillar of the team, he handles data entry, ensuring donors are recognized, properly tracking volunteers, running errands on and off campus, and folding and stuffing all in-house mail. He even helps organize files and notebooks. He sees all the chaos behind the scenes as events are planned, and he is always there to help. He is so much part of the team, his workspace is referred to as Rick's office. It is an honor to recognize Rick Hodge, whose dedication and services make a significant impact on Rowan Helping Ministries. Would you help me thank Rick Hodge? Oh, I got it. All right, last but not least, Matthew March. Matthew, come on up. Yeah, thank you for not doing that. Matt's mom a little while ago said, I don't know how you got to be so tall. And I said to her, well, that's something I never heard my mom say. So congratulations on the whole height thing. Real happy for you. Matt was also nominated by Monica. Matthew Marsh's commitment to helping neighbors in need really shined through in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. As a business owner who could not operate his business during the lockdown, he stepped up to make a difference. He used his relationships with community leaders to set up food drives and garner financial gifts. He helped negotiate a discount for prepackaged meals for the families housed at Hood Seminary, then met Rowan Helping Ministries several times a week at his business to do so his large cooler could be used to store the meals. He is a servant leader who is willing to roll up his sleeves. This past Christmas, he took 3 shifts during the night so warming stations could be open to provide shelter for homeless individuals who live in encampments in our community. He is an essential contributor to fundraising efforts at Rowan Helping Ministries. He has been part of the Resource Development Committee for several years, securing silent auction items and setting up for big events. He has hosted Salisbury Rowan Runners Resolution Run supporting Rowan Helping Ministries at his business. And for the past 3 years, he has opened his home to host a holiday house fundraiser. He is not only a leader in the business community, but he serves on several nonprofit boards and is currently chair of the Rowan Helping Ministries Resource Development Committee, vice chair of the board of directors, and member of the Miracles on the Horizon Capital Campaign Committee. It is a joy to recognize Matt's humble benevolence with the Governor's Volunteer Service Award. Thank you, Matt, for your leadership and willingness to lend a hand whenever and wherever it is needed. Congratulations, Matt. Stay up here. Would Matt's parents stand and, yeah. Hey, Keena, yeah, come on back up. Would the Marshes stand? We'll recognize them. And any of the other family members, the recipients, would you please stand? All right, now we have some pins for you, and I forgot to give these to you. So if our other three nominees will come forward, hey, Matt, come on back up. Yeah, come on back up. If the honorees will come back forward, we have some pins for you. I forgot all about that. Oh, she was already on the elevator, wasn't she? Mr. One more. Like Easter after church. All right. Well, thank you guys. And I tell you, when you get behind the scenes in county work, you really see the difference that volunteers make. So thank you very much. And to let you guys know, we do have openings on county boards. So feel free to apply for those. The next, we'd like to do a proclamation for a group that's an up and coming and not up and coming, they've arrived group. If, I don't know how many of y'all have heard of the Rowan County Young Professional Group, but yeah, go ahead and give them a hand. They've been around for how long, Molly? On and off for a while. So, let's see here, you commandeered in 2019. No, I'm good here. Well, let me tell you a little bit about this group. So they're part of the chamber, right? Yeah, part of the chamber. And I know there's a lot of folks working hard in this group. I only know what I know, but when Molly really got involved, she's a can-do person, and this group really took off. Who you see here is just a smidge of how big this group has grown. It's hundreds of folks now, and you've got folks from other communities moving in, looking for a place to settle and looking for people that have a lot in common with them. It's young business folks who want to be a big part of the community, and they found a place here. And so let me tell you about some of the things that they've done just recently. They've already hosted 6 events in the first 3 months of the year. 20 events are already on the calendar for the rest of 2023, and more are certainly going to be added. By the end of 2023, the Young Professional Program of the Chamber of Commerce will have hosted 32 events. The official Facebook group, which was created in June of 2022, has 443 members and new members joining every week. The group has already been sponsored by the following businesses and organizations: Johnson Concrete, New Point Realty, Stowe Law Firm, Rowan Cabarrus Community College, Hotwire Communications, the STL Club, Rowan Rotary, Cloninger Toyota of Salisbury, Novant Health, F&M Bank, and Catawba College. So then we've got a proclamation for these folks. And so let me read that. This is a proclamation recognizing 2023 as the year of the young professional in Rowan County, and they're doing the whoop whoop in the back. Whereas the Chamber Board of Commissioners in the County of Rowan, as representative public entity, acknowledges the importance of championing young professionals age 45 and younger that live and or work in Rowan County as essential in securing Rowan County's future prosperity. And whereas recruiting and retaining young professionals' talent is a fundamental component of ensuring the best and brightest will be part of Rowan County's workforce. Whereas these young professionals will become the future leaders throughout the communities of Rowan County, whether serving in such a role as part of an organization or business, or on a committee or board within local government. Whereas the Young Professionals Program of the Rowan Chamber of Commerce serves as the welcoming group to young professional newcomers in our area, and whereas the priorities and goals of the Young Professionals Program of the Rowan County Chamber of Commerce should be heard and taken into consideration by our community as a whole. Now, therefore, the Chairman of the Board of the Commissioners of the County of Rowan firmly and unanimously adopt this proclamation recognizing the year of the young professional in Rowan County, North Carolina, for the year 2023, encourages all citizens to participate in activities and programs presented by the Rowan County Chamber of Commerce's Young Professionals Program, as long as you're younger than 45. So I make that in the form of a motion. We have a second. We have a second. All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. With the young professionals, Molly, would you come up first? We'll present this to you, and then if the young professionals will join up here, we'll get a picture with everyone. How about giving them a round of applause? Yeah.
I'd just like to add that one of our young professionals has been chosen by the Charlotte Business Journal's 40 under 40 for 2023. And it is this young man right here, Jamal Black with NAACP. So congratulations.
Are you under 40? Are you?
Why don't the commissioners and Molly get in the front? You're good? You're good? All right.
All right, that works. You go first. Go ahead.
We're so proud of this group. Hey, young pros!
Thank you.
We've got one more presentation. Before we do that, I wanted to, Matt Marsh, how about standing up and announcing your business so we can give you a little advertising here. Right, but we referred to his business quite a few times, but Matt is at the Forum out on South Main Street. So thank you, Matt. All right, Jim.
We have one more presentation today, and I doubt that there's anybody in this room that hasn't heard of these girls before. But we are fortunate enough to have the state championship girls basketball team from 2022, and we've already celebrated that, and they won it again this year, 2023. Right now, Lakai Bryce, the head coach, would you come up, please, and be honored? You want to read? We have a proclamation in here. Can I take it from you 1 minute here? Thank you. This is a proclamation from the Rowan County Board of Commissioners, whereas the Salisbury High School girls basketball team under head coach Micaiah Bryce is hereby recognized and honored for their 2022-2023 victorious basketball season and back-to-back state championship wins. Whereas by their extraordinary efforts, the following members of the dynamic and talented team are to be congratulated for their remarkable and triumphant season. Haley Dalton, Demaya, we're going to call your name, stand up, and then we're going to call you up here individually, okay? Lost my place. Ty Manick. Haley Dalton, Shemaiah Arnold, Michaela Noble, and you'll be hearing her name a lot more here in a few minutes. Isis Nawafa. Kyla Bryant, Kristen Myers, Mariana Sabata, of course, Therese Evans, Mary Morgan, thank God. Sarah Sproul, Julia McNeely. And whereas due to hard work and dedication and their extraordinary chemistry, this outstanding group of Hornets finished out their 90% winning rate 2022 and 2023 season by defending their 2A state championship title and claiming the win for the second year in a row with a 12-game winning streak and 0 losses in the conference tournament on March the 11th, 2023, with an overall record of 27-3. And whereas the individual contributions from each team member were crucial to the successful season, and the tremendous commitment and excellent performance of these young Rowan County women, along with their coaching staff, have proven to be a source of admiration and inspiration to the citizens of Rowan County. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Rowan County Board of Commissioners does hereby honor and congratulate the Salisbury High School 2022-2023 girls basketball team and coaching staff for their incredible achievements and commends them for their display of sportsmanship and leadership as they represented Rowan County. This 17th day of April. Now, would you introduce who's Mr. Caskey has a copy of this declaration, and when you come up here, get that, and then we'll shake hands here and get some pictures and stuff. Would you introduce each of the players, please?
Okay, I'm gonna start with my assistant coaches. This wouldn't be possible without my assistants, Naisha Harris and Talita McCain, and Shrika Cumberson couldn't be here with us, so. Thank you. I'll start with my freshmen, Kiara Sproul, Jalea McNally, on to my sophomores, Tristan Myers, Mariana Zapata, Therese Evans. To my junior class, Shamaya Arnold. Michaela Noble. And last but not least, to my amazing senior group, Haley Dalton. Mary Morgan. Isis Nawapa. Hannah Bryant.
I'd like to also recognize the awards that they have received. Sportsmanship Award, and again, the Sportsmanship Award is for all 1A players that were playing. I'm sorry, 2A players, I beg your pardon. Down there was Isis Dwarf. Most valuable player was Michaela Noble. Most outstanding player of the championship game was Isis Dwarf.
I've been coaching her for 3 years. I still messed the name up.
One outstanding player we have here is Kyla Bryant. Second leading scorer in Salisbury High School history, finishing with 1,809 points. Ranked 8th in the country in scoring in the county. Excuse me. Along with the following player, this is all from Miss Bryant. Also player of the year in the conference, first team all district, first team all conference, second team all state, Rowan County player of the year, the Charlotte Observer Sweet 16 champion, second team all Charlotte Observer. Kyla Bryant will be attending the University of North Carolina Central University on a basketball scholarship. Girls basketball team won the regular season conference for the 4th time and won the conference tournament, going 51-0 the last 2 years, I'd say, with no losses over 4 years. First team all conference was Kyla Bryant, Isis Dwarf, Michaela Noble, and Mary Morgan. Second team all district, Michaela Noble, Kyla Noble, and 3 members of this team were also in the National Honor Society. Kyla Bryant, Mary Morgan, Isis Dwarf. A member of the team will also be attending Winston-Salem State University on a basketball scholarship. Congratulations.
Yes. And we also have here today our principal, Mr. Marvin Moore. Come on up, Mr. Moore.
We'll wait on Mark. Come on, Mark.
How do you make it best? Go
Hey, would ISIS come up here to the microphone and pronounce your name?
It's Isis Nawafa.
Isis Nawafa. All right, that's good.
Perfect. All right. Pretty balanced. Right? 3, 2, 1.
Be last. Ready? Everybody guys front, thank you. Thanks, y'all.
Okay. All right, and to let y'all know, your county commissioners have our own county commissioner basketball league. We'd like to challenge y'all to a game. All right? No, I'm just kidding. That's not true. Congratulations, you guys. Yeah, Jim made that in the form of a motion. Do we have a second? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. All right, well, it's always a pleasure to celebrate success. And yes, sir, we appreciate you being here. Thank you all for being here. And we certainly have a lot of good things happening in Rowan County. And so we're real proud of our ladies and all of them. All right, we'll move on to ZTA 01-23. No. Yeah. Thanks, Jim. I asked you to do that because I knew I'd screw them up.
Good evening.
Evening.
So this is a little bit out of order, the way we typically do things. Instead of putting this on the consent agenda for tonight, we thought we wanted to update the board and give you an idea of what we've been working on relative to this agritourism text. So we did receive a request for the Tourism Development Association. And so staff took the liberty of broadening their request, which focused on alcohol sales and consumption at agritourism sites in the county. And we broadened the scope to include retail and recreation-oriented businesses as well. What I'd like to do tonight is discuss agritourism, agriculture, building exemptions, taxation, and then we'll jump into the proposed text. This will give you a kind of a background on sort of the evolution of how we got to this point. And then afterward, you can ask some questions and then determine whether or not you want to set a public hearing for the next commission meeting or refer it back to the planning board for further study. So when we talk about agritourism, what is agritourism? Simply, if you break down agriculture and tourism, you've got agritourism. Found an online definition that I think is pretty good. And it says it's a commercial enterprise that links agriculture production and or processing with tourism to attract visitors to a farm, ranch, or other agricultural businesses for the purposes of entertaining and or educating visitors while generating income for the farm, ranch, or business owner. And so based on this, we know three things. Number one, it's intended to attract the public to the farm. Number two, it's intended to increase farm income. And number three, it provides recreation, entertainment, or education for the public. And so we've got some examples here that I think everyone would agree that when they hear agritourism, they kind of think of these things: pumpkin patches, hay rides, corn mazes, farmers markets, etc. The general statute definition includes the following activities that are considered agriculture or farming. I've underlined some of these just for emphasis. But number one is the cultivation of soil for production and harvesting of crops. That includes fruits, vegetables, flowers, and ornamental plants. Planting and production of trees and timber, which is silviculture. Dairying, raising livestock, including horses, bees, poultry, and other animals. Aquaculture or fish farming. And then you have the typical operation and maintenance of a farm and the structures on the farm. We get our first idea of what the state categorizes as agritourism here when it's performed on the farm, and includes the marketing and selling of agricultural products. And it also includes a grain warehouse, whether it be public or private. So these are the things that constitute agriculture in terms of definitions for the state. It's interesting that bona fide farms are exempt from county zoning. You see here, county zoning regulations do not apply to property used for bona fide farm purposes. However, the section does not limit zoning regulation with respect to use of farm property for non-farm purposes. And that's what we're really trying to address, this conflict. When you have non-farm uses on a farm property, how are they permitted? Are they subject to zoning, building code, environmental health? And that's really the gist of what we're talking about. So when the term bona fide farm is used, how do you identify a bona fide farm? The state says there's 4 different methods. They have a sales tax exemption certificate issued by Department of Revenue. They can be listed in the present use value program. They can also have a Schedule F on their federal income tax return, or they can have a forest management plan. So the definition of agriculture continues to state that a building or structure that's used for agritourism is a bona fide farm purpose if the building or structure is located on a property that is owned by a person who has the farm sales tax exemption certificate or is enrolled in the present use value program. And so those 2 qualifiers mean that the farm has to be producing some type of income. You got to have a farm sales tax exemption certificate, or you got to be enrolled in the present use value system. And we'll touch on those a little bit. And I think most of you guys know that. But here's really what the state's all-encompassing definition of agritourism means. It's any activity carried out on a farm that allows members of the public for recreational, entertainment, or educational purposes to view or enjoy rural activities, including farming, ranching, historic, cultural, harvest your own activities, hunting, fishing, equestrian activities, or natural activities and attractions. A building or structure used for agritourism includes any building or structure used for these events, including weddings, receptions, meetings, demonstration, meals, and so on. So remember these things, those topics or activities as we get into our zoning text, and we've tried to encompass those or include those where these questions have been in the past. I think you guys know that, but just for our purposes, the building code legislation exempts farm buildings. Building rules do not apply to farm buildings, and those are any non-residential building that is used for a bona fide farm purposes. And we talked about what bona fide farms are, and that includes horse activities and any structure that includes the sale of produce. with the size exemption there. This means that buildings on a farm do not have to get a building permit, but they do have to get electrical, plumbing, or mechanical if they have those other trades in the building. Real quick, present use value system. It's administered by the county assessor. The property is assessed at its present use, which means, is it agriculture, is it horticulture, or is it forest, as opposed to the market value. So there's a market value for the land that's also determined. And the difference between the market value and the present use value is termed or is the deferred taxes. And if the land comes out of the present use value system, the farmer or the new owner is responsible for the current year taxes plus 3 previous years with interest are payable. So that's kind of the penalty, if you will. So there's basic requirements to participate in the present use value. For agriculture use, you got to have 10 acres. Horticulture use is 5 acres. And for forestry, it's 20 acres. For all these, a management plan is required. And then under the agriculture and the horticultural provisions, they've got to show at least an income of $1,000 for 3 years prior to their application year with the tax assessor. So I think you guys are pretty familiar with the way that program works. It's sort of interesting to see how it actually plays out in terms of county. So according to the soil survey, the county is 523 square miles. CHIP says there's just over 80,000 parcels in the county. When you look at the parcels that are in the present use value, there's only 4,475 parcels, which is only about 5% of the parcels, but 43% of the land area, 43% of the land area in the county is in the present use value system. And so we've shaded the parcels here. You can see the dominance in the West Rowan area, as well as the eastern parts of the county. So all these parcels could be eligible for this particular zoning overlay that we're going to talk about here in just a second. So what we did, a lot of where the intent of the change is contained in the definition here. And so what we're telling folks is this is how we intend to apply the rules that follow. But we've reworked the agriculture overlay process. The agriculture overlay is a current zoning district. It's not utilized really at all. And so with these particular uses happening on a farm, it seemed to be a good opportunity to plug these into the overlay. The way these would work is that there would be a rezoning that would be initiated by the owner or the applicant. It would go through the planning board and it would come to the Board of Commissioners. These are a legislative rezoning. There's no special use permit. There's no conditional use. There's no testimony. There's no swearing in, that kind of stuff. So these are just a general public hearing. And so I want to just read a couple of these things to you because they are really somewhat the qualifier for some folks that could apply. The purpose of the district is to enhance the underlying RA district. So if they're in the rural residential suburban, CBI, industrial, whatever, they would not be eligible to apply. So we're talking about RA zone properties with options that encourage the continued vitality of active farming operations and preservation of viable agricultural areas. The district may be applied to all or portions of the property consisting of working farmland used extensively for agricultural and livestock production. So if they've got 100 acres, they don't need to zone the entire thing. We're talking about specific uses that we're going to talk about in a second, but that are going to be for non-farm activity. So they don't need to rezone it commercial, but they're on the farm, and so they can have smaller portions of it. But they need to be a working farm. We don't really see this as a passive farm that doesn't have working operations. The district is intended to supplement bona fide farming and agritourism activities, in the definition we looked at earlier, with ancillary retail trade and services to support the overall farm operation. Those uses identified in subsections B and C are generally recognized as non-farm uses, but are reasonably related to tourism interests when occurring in conjunction with an existing farm operation. The standards from this chapter, the zoning ordinance, are utilized to protect neighbors and the general public's health and safety from the broad impacts when introducing these ancillary uses in a rural setting. And so we'll talk about the district here criteria in just a second. So this is really just an excerpt from the zoning ordinance. And the red line, excuse me, the red line text is what we would recommend eliminating. So if you go down the permitted uses, the first two things we eliminate are agriculture production for crops and livestock. You're probably saying, well, why in the world would you do that? Well, they're already allowed in the RA district. You remember I told you that agriculture uses are exempt. There's no sense in taking up space in the ordinance for something that's exempt. So when we talk about agriculture services, those are going to be permitted. Wholesale farm products and raw materials that are part of a farm. Those are going to be things like your co-ops, your cattle auctions. Farm supplies are going to be here. Agriculture, chemicals, and fertilizers. Those are going to be permitted just with no questions asked. So then we get into the idea of the ancillary uses that are permitted. So they're going to be permitted on an existing farm operation, subject to possibly building code or environmental health standards. And this has all happened administratively. If the property is zoned AO, you won't see these folks again. They're going to be dealing with Shane and myself or our office, Thomas and the folks in environmental health potentially. So this gives them the path forward to come in and talk with us about what they want to do. At this point, they can do any or all of them. Okay, none of these are mutually exclusive at this point. But these are the other things that they would be allowed to do. The building material, hardware, garden supplies, I mean, it's just like lumber and building materials, general merchandise store, food stores, apparel stores, home furniture, eating and drinking places, excluding what we term a bar, so that'd be a restaurant, miscellaneous retail, sports and rec camps, gun club or shooting club. This would be an indoor facility, an amusement ride, not a park, but a ride, one. Archery ranges, these are going to be indoor, boat, canoe, rental, those kind of things. Day camps and the like. So those would be all things that would be permitted administratively. So the ones that are going to show up at the special requirements, these are the ones that have typically been a special use permit that the board would see. You've seen cabins before, remember? You've seen campgrounds and RV parks. So provided that the applicant can show us with the site plan that they can meet these standards that would have heretofore been a special use, they can be permitted administratively. And so when we talk about drinking places, we use the general term bar, but that will mean that they could sell alcohol on site. They can consume alcohol on site, provided that their area that they get rezoned or where they've got it, there's 1,000-foot separation from a church, school, daycare, park. That's a current standard in our ordinance now, the only one for a bar. If they want to do cabins, there's a 2-acre minimum area. There's setbacks, there's road requirements, there's parking standards, and there's screening and their buffering. Again, these are prescribed in the ordinance, and if they can show us they meet them, we're going to permit them. Also in the campground and RV park, it's very similar, but there's also sewage disposal, trash removal, and there's a no dressing requirement. So for gun clubs, shooting ranges, archery and the like that are outdoors, there's standards in there now for shot containment, noise mitigation, setbacks, warning signs, operation hours, lighting, and there's insurance requirements as well. They want to do a horse show, the rental of horses or have rodeos. There's stuff for nuisance, odors, setbacks, parking, and noise mitigation. And if you're going to do a zoological park, there's a 20-acre minimum, same kind of things for nuisance, odors, setbacks, security restrictions. The other item we included is that if there's a change in the bona fide farm status, any expansion, repair, and replacement of any of these uses we permitted administratively would be considered a non-conforming use. Remember, we talked about the present use value, sort of that clawback provision. This is sort of similar to that. So let me talk about one thing that maybe would have been an unintended consequence of this effort, is that is there any concern about mixing the sale of alcohol and a gun club, archery range, shooting range, and that kind of thing? Had a really good conversation with a member of the ALE team at the state and explained different rules about how things work and the permitting side of them. There's not really an ALE law that prevents this from occurring, but this particular general statute that's referenced as number 1 there states that it prevents weapons in establishments where alcohol is sold and consumed. So I think we've got 3 options. If we leave the text the way it is, that responsibility is transferred to the farmer. It's up to them to sort of police their business interest and prevent that cross-contamination, if you will, from someone being there and using their shooting range. Or you could look at these as mutually exclusive uses. You could say you could do one and not the other. Or you could just remove 7997, the gun club and shooting club, and 7999 from this particular allowance. Again, the ask from the TDA was based on really the ability to sell alcohol at some of these sites. And the county attorney and our staff, we've sort of been down this road a couple different times, and we've seen what other places wrestle with as well. The thing to remember is the entity or the farm has to come in and is going to have to get an agriculture overlay rezoning. And so at that point, I guess your comfort level is going to be how big is the area they're going to rezone. And, you know, it's a general rezoning, and sometimes who or what is that entity? Where's your comfort level with that? So those are some things I want to just bring to your attention. The other is with the shooting ranges, we do have an hours of operation. It's from sun up to sundown. Had a conversation with Mr. Abramson, who had submitted the request on behalf of the TDA and offered that he thought maybe we might want to consider something like that, because the planning board really wrestled with that idea of how long, you know. But I think when we started talking about farmers that are doing this, they get up early, they want to go to bed. So I think that might be something else to consider as well. Either put a time limit on the 5813, the drinking places, or just say till sundown, something like that. We can make these changes. Again, this is just the recommended version of the text that came from the planning board, and wanted to get you all's comfort level before we pushed it out for a public hearing. So, Mr. Pierce, I think you got a quick.
I'm just thinking ahead. I don't do that very often. How is this going to affect these different organizations in the fall when they have turkey shoots? Because everyone I've ever been to, everybody's just drinking up a storm. You know, how is this going to affect them?
I don't think it will.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, I don't want to do something to knock off these fundraisers that these different clubs have.
Well, we've got an exemption for turkey shoots in the ordinance now. So we don't permit them now. We also don't permit stuff for ALE. So I'm not sure what the what that process is, so.
Well, I guess my question is, if we limit these farmers to not being able to serve alcohol on their agritourism zoning, how can we then turn around and let these people have turkey shoots and they're out there serving alcohol?
From zoning, they are, yeah, that's an AL
Serving alcohol,
legal,
they're not.
but I think, and I don't know how they're doing it, but I think there's probably a set aside if they're just giving it away. Whereas I think these instances, they're talking about selling it for on-site and takeaway.
Well, can we look into that?
Well, I think that's yeah, we can get you an answer.
Well, yeah, I just want to know where we
Yeah.
stand on that as the county. I mean, I don't want us to, do something that we shouldn't. If
We
you
can,
just get an answer and give it to Jay, then, if it's not going to interfere with this, we can go ahead and put it
Well-
on the consent.
Well, but I think what this applies to only right now is the sale for on-site consumption as a regular operating business. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We learned a long time ago not to take on turkey shoots.
That's what I'm trying not to do.
yeah, yeah.
So all we're going to do tonight is schedule public hearing for May 1 or refer back to planning board. I only have one thing to say, and I know you're happy to hear that. Go back to your screen where you said, keep that in mind. This is really what this is all about. You know what I'm talking about, Ed? Yeah, that's it. We're to talk about weddings and stuff. Is it one more?
There. Yeah. It's that last sentence in the paragraph.
A building or structure used for agritourism includes any building or structure used for public or private events, including but not limited to weddings, receptions, meetings, demonstrations of farm activities, meals, and other events that are taking place on the farm because of its farm or rural setting. I've got 3 kids. All 3 of them are married. I think 2 of them, well, one got married in a barn. They don't tend to get married in church anymore. This is, I know when we get into the alcohol discussion that it creates some controversy, but the fact is weddings, receptions, meetings, demonstrations, meals, other events, alcohol is already there. What is happening is these event places are getting a permit for each event, correct?
Or I believe the caterer can carry the event.
Right.
Or the person that's going to have the event can get, there's a number of different special one-time permits that can be obtained through the state. And Shane and I were pretty surprised at how easy it is to get those.
Yeah, so one question's always asked, is this something new that we're introducing to the community or to the county? And the answer is no. It's already there. It's just, I think one of the differences is we're in a couple of conversations. We're in conversations with the farming community on how can we supplement our farm income so we don't lose our farm. And so they're doing all kind of really creative things, whether it's animals or tours or the mazes. We've got one here in the community that has tens of thousands of kids probably a year that come through there, right? And so they have all of these events too. They have corporate events that are coming out, weddings, meetings. And so they're pulling these permits over and over and over, and they're having someone in and come in and sell those. And they just are saying, so that we're covered under one banner. Let's just get under that banner and let us provide it instead of having to go through this every single time. We're really not introducing anything new to the county. Well, I mean, there may be. I don't want to say nothing new because I don't know, but that certainly is one issue. That's all I wanted to say.
So you comfortable using the sunset provision for the alcohol sales, just in terms of timeframe? Yeah. We incorporate that. Okay. And there doesn't seem to be a problem having both of them on the same property if it worked out separation wise or standards. Okay, good. Just wanted to be clear with that. Okay.
Do we need to vote to add it to the, no, we'll just add it. Okay. All
I
right.
think so.
It's a lot of work. There are years and years of back work on this, right, Shane? Lot of issues have been brought up for years and years. So this just shows up tonight, but this has been going on for a long, long time. So thank you guys for your good work and thank the planning
Ed, would
board.
you thank the planning board for their dedication to get this done? Because I know it's a long time process. And
Yeah.
tell them we appreciate it.
Shane, quasi-judicial hearing for SUP 01-23. I've got a speech I've got to read. The hearing for consideration of SUP 01-23 is now in session and will focus on an application submitted by Jeremy Burnett to bring an existing structure and spectator bleacher into compliance at Millbridge Speedway on tax parcel 768-021 located at 6670 Mooresville Road. If you feel that any member of the board may have a conflict of interest in hearing the case, please address the board now prior to any testimony or information being presented. When the board enters into deliberations to decide the case, no further testimony may be presented. The board will render one of the following three decisions. 1, approve the permit as requested or with additional conditions. 2, continue the request, or 3, deny the request. All parties who plan to testify in this case may come forward and be sworn in. Those who testify must state their name and address at the podium for the benefit of the board's clerk. All material presented must be given to the clerk and will become part of the record. This board can only accept sworn testimony. No hearsay evidence is admissible, and Shane Stewart will present the case on behalf of the county.
Shane Stewart, Rolling County Planning Office, 402 North Main Street, Salisbury. So the property that we're speaking of tonight as the subject of the special use permit is tax parcel 768-021 located at 6670 Mooresville Road. Jeremy and Ashley Burnett are the property owners. Take a look at the site here. In this image, you see the subject property boundary. It's about 14.5 acres on the north side of Mooresville Road, Highway 150, about halfway between White and Briggs Road. So here's an image back from 1994. That's our oldest aerial photo that we have other than the crop photos, but we use this generally to establish a date that's pretty close for watershed and also getting into things that predate zoning. But page 1 of the staff report goes into some background detail if the board wants to read it. And rather than being here all night, I'll leave that to your reading. But when countywide zoning came into establishment, February 16th of 98. This property was zoned rural agriculture. Racetracks are not a permitted by right use in that district. And in the image you see here, although it's from, I think, another source, pretty sure the Millbridge Speedway was established around 1989. Can't confirm that exact date, but you see in this 94 image, it is definitely there, no question. There's an operational area we'll look at shortly, but it generally follows this area here that's cleared. 94 photos, one is good, but some of this portion in here, although it may not appear to be developed, it was used for parking and various other activities. So that much is very clear. So although I skipped past a lot of the background, let's go into what some of the recent things that have occurred. In September of 21, staff became aware that there were some expansions on the track property and adjacent property here. This is that same track we were speaking of earlier, the Burnett 768-021. We'll talk about these others next. But when the 2021 photos came out, it showed some improvements. I guess to kind of jump forward too, we also had some concerned citizens that reached out and shared, were we aware of that? And page 1 through 3 goes into the additional detail of those communications with the applicant. So specifically, let's talk about what's being requested tonight. So there's a 24 by 36 foot building here that's a tech shed. It's a 2-bay building that has car scales in it where they bring a race car in to weigh it and probably do other little testing and whatnot. There's a wash station out front with 4 sinks. It did not get a zoning permit or building permit. There's a set of bleachers that are here that are different than what was there before. We'll look at this in more detail. There was 2 other structures in the former location. There was a bleacher here and it's now a larger set of bleachers. But in short, these did not go through zoning and building approval. Now, when I pointed out that operational limit, this blue boundary is what staff has determined to be the 94 area operational limit predating countywide zoning. Notice I did leave out the driveway. Just for the purpose of this, I kept it to this operational area. There's a gate here. And this is what we deemed to be that limit. The red area, which overlaps the blue here on this line, the light yellow is the property lines. Mr. Hoffman, which I believe is the father-in-law of Mr. Burnett, he owns these tracks here adjacent to it. And this red area is what really jumped out at us, that the site was graded, received a treatment of recycled asphalt, concrete that you see here. And again, if you read in the background, we submitted a notice of violation to them. And at that point, it kind of transpired into this submittal for a special use permit just to address these 2 structures here. It does not address this red area. From staff's read of the ordinance, there's nothing that we can do currently in our ordinance that would allow for that area in red, in our opinion. That opinion has been appealed. So there is 2 appeals on file right now, one from Burnett, one from Hoffman dealing with these. But I believe, and I'll let them address this if they want, specifically what we're looking at too are these 2 structures here, which were the primary point of contention with that site, less some little wedge here between these 2 lines. I should also add that one of the main important things of a non-conforming status, and I suppose the degree of nonconformity, right now, again, there's nothing in the ordinance that would allow staff to permit anything within that operational limit or an expansion that's devoted to the track or any of the track operations. So with that said, there's not an option. And I would contend that the best avenue, or the only avenues they would have would be, one, this special use to address the parts within that non-conforming circle, or consider a text amendment. We have a non-conforming use that can't expand if they applied for an ordinance change to change the local ordinance in the zoning ordinance for racetrack operations that, you know, are non-conforming but may want to expand. And then at that point, there could be a rezoning considered to change from RA to commercial to address an expansion. Aside from that, we have what's on the screen before you is the special use permit criteria in section 135C. This is a carve out that allows you to propose some expansions. The very top one, there's the key. Did you increase your operational area? From the circle we looked at, it's within that operational limit, and we'll look specifically at those structures here shortly. Point two is there's no greater nonconformity with respect to, in this case here, dimensional restrictions, and then I think, or other requirements such as parking. I think we can probably strike the other portions there. And then thirdly, there's no significant adverse impact to surrounding properties, public health, et cetera. And I think too, much like any special use permit, you take this in context of what are they asking for and apply those standards such as that, because this will vary based on what you're requesting. So much like the special use permit general criteria applies the same for someone that wants a storage building on a vacant lot with no house that's over our administrative allowance, or an asphalt plant. So it's definitely going to vary. So let's go and compare our old photo on top from 94 to one of the most recent ones from 2022. This is the southern end of the track. Shows up much better here, but that's approximately the same location here. You see in the upper photo, we had two small former buildings and the proposed structure here that was being requested. It's in the same general footprint. It's definitely bigger, but that blue line comes here, so we're definitely within that location. And the bleachers on the upper part, you see they're a good bit longer, but they're not quite as deep. So again, same general footprint for the replacement.
Now, you're talking about the bleachers come in off of the road that face toward the track. Because there's other bleachers up on the right side, but you're not considering those bleachers tonight.
That's correct. As you come in the site, this is probably the first set that you see that faces the track. There's seating all along this location here. I don't know if folks stand in other places, but these are fixed seats. And this is the one we're speaking of.
Now, before you talk about fixed seat, the bleachers up there.
Well, in terms of, they are movable, but I mean, they've been there since 94. That's what I'm speaking of here with all of these, and this is new. Now, it does require a plan review from the building inspections office. Even though they're movable, there's a setup and design they've got to adhere to.
Basically, you're talking about anything on the right and the parking that's already been graded and they're used up on the right. We're not considering that.
No, sir. No, sir. On the upper image provides a little bit better perspective. I will say this is measurements that staff determined from using our oblique photos. So I didn't go out and physically measure this, so this is approximate. But we have on the upper, you see these two structures here. Here's the current building, 2 bays, the wash areas. It's called the tech shed. It's referred to in all the material. That's what we're talking about here. And then the set of bleachers. So not to bombard you with a bunch of figures here, but it's about 64 feet long, approximately. There's 4 rows. And the new, we've got, I measured 47 feet wide, 14 rows. Again, maybe off a bit, but I think we're ballpark. In the comparison, I think this is the primary thing that the applicant should illustrate to the board. So we've got, if you want to talk linear feet of seat space, is 256 linear feet with the old, the new 658, just linear foot to sit on. And from our calculations, which in the report, the zoning ordinance does not identify distance for a seat. These are not fixed seats. I don't think they're numbered, but nonetheless, building code for like a church pew or bleachers like this references 18 inches. I think that's a fair standard to apply. Granted, that's a tight seat, but it's at least something for a basis for discussion. At that point, the zoning ordinance requires 1 parking space for every 4 seats. So when you compare the difference and I calculated each one separately because the way the math would work, they're not all going to end on a whole number. So there may be rounding down in each case. But I come up with the difference between these 2 sets of bleachers per the 18 inches and the 4 seats per required parking space was about 67 additional parking spaces. That's important that can be contained on site and not in this additional area. And I think that addresses criteria number 2, that there's no greater nonconformity with respect to the parking requirements. I will point out that the image you're looking at here is not the most recent provided by the applicant, nor what's in your packet. I failed to include the most recent one that calls out parking area here. So refer to what's in your attachment as the most recent for the parking area. But it pointed, I think, down here, but all of this is identified. There's no real, I'm sure there's order to it, but we can't discern what that is. So I think that's important for them to address. The applicant did provide their responses to 1 through 6, the general criteria. We provided a few points of interest, I guess, to address this criteria here, but largely is minimal in the staff report. We focused on 1 through 3. For the land use plan, you're not typically going to find a land use plan that talks specifically about one particular use or special use applications. However, I think the 3rd bullet point here is probably the most direct, and it's actually from the East plan, not the West, which they, for the most part, mirror one another in text and organization, but it states here proposals for expansion of an existing business if it doesn't, if there is a minimizing of the conflict, that it might be encouraged. But area 1 is one of the more low density areas because it wraps all around the county on the northern end too, but no other recommendations. Highway business I would deem as more retail and service sector that's not recreation. So that's where there would be highway business generally encouraged along NC highways. That's for a rezoning and not a special use specific request. As far as notice, we provided direct mail to these individuals that own land within 100 feet of the ordinance requirements. Sign looks a little bit wonky because staff wrapped it around the pole, but it was posted both directions. And we provided direct email to one resident nearby that requested some communication and contact with it. So our typical findings of fact, the 3 all encompassing based on the 6 and the 3 other references in the ordinance. This is what the board's accustomed to seeing. And I believe there's some testimony that will be provided to address those criteria as well. And Often we do provide example findings. In this case, we did not. If the board's interested in making a decision and it needs staff assistance for developing some findings, then I think that may be best in order for a potential tabling of the request. So I pointed out too, of course, here's our typical procedure. The board obviously can approve, deny, table the request. If there's conditions the board wants to add, I think that the obvious ones are building permit and plan review for the structure, the bleachers. If there's concerns about the bleachers that reference it's more of an expansion, then that I suppose that could be considered separately. However, the board would like to do that. Any questions?
I noticed there have been a couple of citations issued. It looks like the last one, November 17th, 2022, notice of violation to Mr. Burnett and Mr. Hoffman regarding using the expanded operational area for spectator parking and racer equipment parking. Are those supposed to be used currently?
Bleachers, I would say no, building no, and expanded parking no.
We know that if there were permits on the original buildings that were out there.
I do not know.
Says on page 4 of your comments under number 2, in both the former and current location, the shed and bleachers appear to meet setbacks in north, south, west property lines, but are well short of the requirement on the eastern line. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I think too, when you consider, I mean, it's non-conforming for a reason. It doesn't meet all the requirements. And I think that's provided just to give you an idea of how does it compare to the current standards. But I would tender that they're a general replacement in the same general footprint, whether it's 1 foot this way or that. And it's kind of, again, an in-kind replacement, although larger, but we're talking about in the same general location.
All right, any other questions for Shane? I'm sure you're not going anywhere. All right, if not, then would the applicant or representation have something for us?
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Mark Camblin. I'm an attorney with Grimes, Yeoman in Mooresville. Address is 119 Grove Park Drive, Mooresville. Here today to represent the Mr. Burnett and this special use permit. As Shane pointed out, this hearing tonight for the special use permit is only for the shed and the bleachers. So while I know we have seen some additional information about the additional parking and items on those sides, we are not going to be talking to those. And also, should anybody else wish to speak to those tonight, we would ask that y'all, again, focus on what the special use permit is for tonight, being the bleachers and the tech shed. Based upon what Shane said, what we would like to do is bring up Mr. Burnett. present him some questions so we can tender him as both the applicant, potentially an expert witness in the operation of racetracks. And then after that, bring up Mr. Don Horton and tender him an expert in real estate valuation for one of the items on here. So unless y'all have some direct questions for me, I would like to bring Mr. Burnett up and we can start asking him questions and getting this moving forward.
Okay.
So just for the record, if you could state your name, please, and where you live.
My name is Jeremy Burnett. I live at 6670 Mooresville Road, Salisbury, North Carolina.
And can you give us some quick background information on your education and your experience with racetrack operations?
So I leased Millbridge Speedway starting in 2011 and purchased it in 2014. And prior to that, I ran a touring series and promoted several events throughout the country in 5 or 6 different states, promoting racetrack, events at racetracks, stuff like that.
And again, just for the record, can you tell us where you're employed at this point in time and what you do?
I own and operate Millbridge Speedway, promote races there every year, and have since 2011.
And in preparing for your testimony tonight, what sort of information did you review and what are you relying upon in formulating your opinions and testimony?
Personal experience, I've reviewed the ordinances and all the documents that Shane has provided us.
And based upon your personal experience in operating racetracks, do you believe your testimony will be helpful in assisting the board to understand the facts and matters involved in this special use permit?
Yes, I do.
And should the board, we would tender Mr. Burnett as not only the applicant here, but also as an expert in racetrack operations, should there not be any objection to that. And hearing none, I'll take that as a yes. So
Yes, that again.
just based upon Mr. Burnett's experience in operating the track since 2011, his experience in operating multiple racing series throughout the country in 5 to 7 states, I believe you said that Jeremy be recognized as an expert in racetrack operations.
I mean, I'm not going to agree to that. I don't know that.
Let's see here. Can you describe the basic operations of Millbridge Speedway as they compare to other tracks that you have promoted the series that you have held at as well as operated at?
I mean, it's very similar. We've promoted races in Virginia, Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, Iowa, and Wisconsin. All tracks have been similar to Millbridge in operation. We've done that since 2009. I've probably promoted close to 1,000 events since 2009.
And in that promotion, what is a typical, what are your typical responsibilities in the promotion of a race?
From announcing the event, setting up the concession stand, preparing the racetrack, doing parking, directing the race, doing the technical inspections after the race. Pretty much do all that.
Again, I would, based upon this information, and we can provide more information upon this, but again, I would present Mr. Burnett as an expert in the operation of racetracks based on his years and years of experience in operating and promoting races, not only at Millbridge, but throughout the country.
So the question for this board is whether they've presented satisfactory experience that would satisfy you that he is an expert in the field for which he's being offered, which is racetrack operations.
I don't know what the relevance is. I
It-
mean, If he operates the racetrack, he operates the racetrack, but that's got nothing to do with what he's wanting us to do for him.
Well, yes, sir, and I understand that. but-
There's a difference. Testimony in these things is either lay or it's expert. And so there is a higher standard to present as an expert, but there's also a higher reliance on expert testimony as opposed to lay testimony. That's why you're being asked to consider whether he's satisfied you that he's an expert. And you guys may discuss that and somebody make a motion that he does or does not. And we can resolve that issue now, but they'll still go forward with the testimony.
Well,
Not, argument's sake, say he is an expert.
you want,
Not conflict of interest, him being an expert for himself?
No, sir.
is there any concern that we should have Jay with agreeing to this?
Yeah, it don't matter to me one way or the other.
I mean, they're asking us to agree that he's an expert. Does that,
And the basic test is just whether they've offered enough experience to satisfy you that he is an expert versus a layperson. And so I would suggest that the board make a motion one way or the other
Make the motion.
to accept him or not accept him as an expert.
all right, make a motion, the board accept Mr. Burnett as a expert in the field of small speedway operations.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, commissioners. Mr. Burnett, how long, would you agree with what Mr. Stewart said, that the Speedway has been in existence since at least 1989?
Yes.
How long have you been familiar with the Speedway?
I moved to North Carolina in 1999 and I knew about it in probably year 2000 or 2001. And I made my first trip there in 2009.
And I believe that you said you were familiar with the property before you purchased it.
Yes, I leased the property for approximately 3 years before I purchased it.
And if you could tell us a little bit about the previous shed and bleachers that were on the property.
So when we took the track over, there was, I think we've seen a picture up there, a smaller shed with a well house next to it. And both of them were in pretty rough shape. You can kind of see the well house. It was falling in, and same with the building. Like you could basically stick your hand through it because it was rotted out so bad. And then right next to that shed, there's a dark brown spot, I guess, black spot. That's where our scales are, and they're embedded in the ground. So the carts would drive up on scales, weigh them, and they drive off. Well, that's obviously outside. So when it would rain, that little pit would get full of water and sometimes short scales out. And I always had to fix them. So we went with that building to cover all of it, to have scales inside. Our technical inspector is also an older gentleman, and in the summertime, it's pretty hot outside. So we'd like to keep him out of the sun. And the bleachers, the old bleachers, they were made of concrete and they had 2x4 railing around them, around the outside. You can kind of see it in the picture. Those were also rotten, and the bottom row of the bleachers, they were all concrete. They were broken half. And there was a pretty big hole almost right in the middle of them. And it was going to be pretty expensive for us to fix them then. And the bleachers that are currently up, I got donated from a Speedway down in Florida. They had to take them down because they were expanding, and they gave them to us, and I had somebody cart them up here for free for us. So, and then I got the wood donated. So I didn't really plan on them being the size or footprint that they are. But at the time I got them, basically it cost me no money at all. So that's what we went with there.
So can you, just to get it for clarification, what is in the current tech shed versus what was in the old shed?
It's basically the same. So the scales are now inside, which they were outside. It's the same scale pad and everything. It's just covered now. And inside the tech shed, our classes, they have to buy their tires from us and they can't take them home with them. So they're all in the shed, locked up. So they don't cheat on them for to make their carts go faster. So they're also in that building.
Now, with the construction of the new shed, did that expand the operations of the racetrack?
It did not.
Was the shed permitted?
It was not.
And can you tell us why it was not permitted?
So I bought the shed from a carport company and I designed it with where the doors are and everything. And I asked them if I had to have a permit and they told me I did not have to have a permit because it's technically not a permanent structure is what they told me, because it's basically a carport with sides on it. And I took their word for it and didn't look into getting a permit.
So are you willing to go through the necessary steps to get the tech shed properly permitted?
I am.
And is it your understanding that obtaining the special use permit is the first step in that?
Yes.
Is the current tech shed safer than the items it replaced?
It is quite a bit safer.
How does it compare visually?
It looks a lot nicer than the old one.
As for the bleachers, you talked about how they differed from the previous bleachers and where you got the new bleachers. I believe you said you didn't design them, correct?
Correct.
Are the new are the new bleachers safer than the previous bleachers?
They are. The old bleachers, like I said, the bottom row was broken half, and the steps on the old bleachers were pretty tall steps compared to what the normal bleachers are. So if you were trying to get up to the top, it was a little bit more work, not to mention the broken one on the bottom step.
And again, visually, how do they compare to how do the new bleachers compare to the old ones?
They look a lot better than the old ones.
Now, the new bleachers as they currently sit, can you describe the capacity at a normal race weekend or normal race event, what that is?
At a normal race, the capacity is the people that sit in them is probably about the same as what used to sit in them. Mainly, I don't know if we had that picture earlier of the front stretch, the straightaway of the racetrack, which is where the majority of the people sit.
Along this area here?
Yeah, that's where the majority of people sit because that's where the concession stand is. That's where the bathrooms are. And the bleachers in question we call them our pit grandstands, which is where they're the closest to the pit area for the racers. So when your go-kart is on the track, the parents go up, sit in them grandstands, watch their kid race, and then go back to their trailer. They're closest to the pit area. So that's where the most people that sit up there is pit people.
And approximately how many people is that?
On a normal Tuesday or Wednesday night, I would say 50 to 75.
And how does that compare to the old bleachers that were replaced?
They should all fit in the old ones.
Now, I believe that Shane said that the typical seat in here was 18 inches. Is that true for Millbridge or?
The seats we have on the front straightaway came from Charlotte Motor Speedway, and they're 21 inches wide from armrest to armrest. The typical seat used to be 18 inches, but Americans have grown quite a bit in the past, right?
Exhibit A here.
Right.
Based upon the use of these bleachers in comparison to the old bleachers, have you found that you need more parking as a result of these bleachers?
I do not.
Should it be found that you need more parking, do you have the capability of providing that additional parking on the site as is?
Yes, we do.
And do these new bleachers, are they an expansion of the racetrack's operation in your opinion?
No, they're not.
Now, if the board was to ask you to in some way modify these bleachers or potentially remove seating, would that be something you would be willing to consider if possible?
I would.
So based on these questions we've asked so far and just what you know about this, I have just a few more questions to ask you. Based on the current tech shed and bleachers, in your opinion, do you believe there will be an increase in the operational area of the racetrack?
No, I don't.
In your opinion, do you believe that the tech shed and bleachers will not create a greater nonconformity with respect to what exists at the racetrack in its current state?
No.
Do you believe that the current tech shed and bleachers in their current form will not create a significant adverse impact on surrounding properties or the public health of the area?
I do not.
Based upon your experience and knowledge, do you believe that adequate transportation access exists to the site?
No.
No or yes?
Wait, what was it? I'm sorry.
Sorry. Do you believe that adequate transportation access exists to the site?
Oh, yeah.
Just one more time. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe the current use of the tech shed or bleachers will result in hazardous or safety conditions at the property?
No.
Do you believe the current use of the tech shed or bleachers will not generate significant noise, odor, glare, or dust?
It will not. No.
In your opinion, do you believe the current use of the tech shed or bleachers will generate excessive traffic or parking problems?
No.
Based on your opinion, do you believe the current use of the tech shed or bleachers will not create a significant visual impact for adjoining properties or passersby?
No.
Do you believe, in your opinion, that the current use of the tech shed or bleachers will not materially endanger the public health or safety?
No.
And the last one, do you believe, in your opinion, that the current use of the tech shed or bleachers will be in general harmony with the area and the racetrack as it currently exists?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Sorry. In your opinion and experience, based on the current use of the tech shed and the bleachers within the use of the racetrack,
Right.
will that use be in general harmony with the existing use of the racetrack in the area?
No, it won't.
No or yes? Will it be in harmony?
Harmony with
Yeah.
Sorry.
When I think too much and try to write too confusingly, I apologize. But we'll let you go with that. Yes. So at this point in time, unless you have something else to say or the commissioners have a question for you, I believe that covers everything for us on that part.
Any questions, the applicant from commissioners?
Yeah, what type of vehicles are you racing up there?
We call them winged outlaw carts. They're basically a go-kart with a roll cage on them and a wing.
They make the same amount of noise as a go-kart?
Some of them do, yes.
Some do make the same noise or make?
Yeah.
Exceed
It just depends on which class. There's several different.
races out there that are much noisier than the regular go-karts.
I'm not sure what that has to do with the tech shed or the bleachers.
Trying to find out what you're running around there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess some of them are, yes. It just depends what you consider a go-kart and how noisy they are.
What are your hours of operation?
Normally from 6 p.m. till 10 p.m. normally. Some nights go later if there's an accident or it rains a little bit and we get done a little later, but normally we don't go past 10:30 or 10:45.
How many nights a week would that be?
It depends on the week. Some nights it's 3 nights a week. Some nights it's 1. We have approximately 55 event days per year, but I think 6 or 7 of those are during the day events in the wintertime. Most of the classes we race are quiet, that you probably couldn't even hear them from the road. There's only a handful of them that are louder.
So you said 3 nights a week. What nights are those?
Mainly Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday.
So mainly, that means no Friday nights, no Sunday racing.
We've had a Sunday race in the past, but probably not in a couple of years. And we used to race Friday nights several years ago, but we don't anymore. Right now, for this year, our schedule is basically Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday. There might be one Monday night race or two Monday night races in there, but those are also the quieter go-karts. We do practice every now and then too.
Describe that. When does that occur? Is that 3 days a week? Is that 5, 6, 7 days a week? What times are those?
Yeah, mainly they're from 6 to 9 p.m. People rent the track and come out and practice, and we do 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. slots.
What nights?
Depends. I mean, pretty much any night of the week, if anybody wants to rent the track.
Do you ever get any complaints from the neighbors about the noise?
A handful, not many.
Well, I mean, it's pretty rural out there. I don't imagine there's a whole lot of neighbors to start with.
Right.
So a handful is considerable to me.
Right.
And one thing that we would like to again point out is this track has been in existence there since at least 1989. It has been there for over 30 years at this point in time. It has been a recognized non-conforming use. There was actually litigation about it and it went all the way to the Court of Appeals, where it was determined this was a non-conforming use that is permitted to continue to operate here. And by our understanding of this, with it being a non-conforming use, there is currently no curfew for the track itself. The Burnetts do their best to be good neighbors and keep it within that 10 p.m. time frame, from which our understanding, the noise curfew in Rowan County, from what we found, is 11 o'clock. So they are ending operations on a nightly basis before that curfew kicks into place most of the time. And again, as I said, it is a non-conforming use, so that curfew is not necessarily applicable to them, but they do their best to keep it within that 10 p.m. dead time frame.
Also the noise ordinance, does he keep that within the confines of the ordinance?
With the ordinance being the 1998 ordinance and the track being a previously accepted non-conforming use, there's certainly some questions as to the fact of if that 1998 ordinance would apply to the track as a recognized non-conforming use. But again, we are here tonight to talk about the tech shed and the bleachers here.
Non-conforming also.
Which is the non-conformity, and we're seeking the special use permit to bring those into allowance as set forth within the ordinance, and that is what this application is for. One more witness who will testify to establish some of the other remaining items that you as the commissioners need to be able to determine and find with these findings that this reconstruction of existing replacement of buildings on the non-conforming lot that are recognized on the non-conforming lot are allowed to move forward. And then based upon the conversations that we've had with the planning department, we can move forward with going to the building department, getting everything teched up correctly, get the building permits corrected based upon the unfortunate information that the contractor had told the Burnetts, and get everything corrected here along the lines of the tech shed and the bleachers.
All right, any other questions for council and for Mr. Burnett?
Chair, and I want to be careful going back to the expert witness, and you tendered him as an expert witness in track operations, but he also testified on specifically some safety issues, and I'm not sure that your first tender covered those, and I'm not sure that the board would accept him as an expert in those safety issues with regard to whether the bleachers are safer or safe. And I did want to draw that distinction so we didn't leave here and think that everything he said, in my opinion, fell within that approval.
Well, should the board like to hear more on his background with that and what he has done, we can certainly do that. But he's also testifying there as the owner of this property who is visually seeing these, and that is also his personal opinion on these items. So if you would like to hear more about what he has done in the past with racetrack operations and ensuring the safety of spectators, participants, and all of those type things, we would certainly be happy to provide you that information and add that to cover all our bases here.
All right, thank you. So you have someone else you want to speak?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Been sworn earlier.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
For the record, could you please state your name?
Yes, my name is Don Horton Jr.
If you could give us some quick background about what you do for work and where you live.
I am the owner and broker of DDG Properties. I live at 1094 Landon's Court in China Grove. I was raised in the Mount Ola area, Rowan County Schools, Lees McRae College, BS in Biology, 1993. Construction manager for Lakeside Park and Talbot Business Park, as well as a sales manager. I typically operate as a buyer's agent on property issues.
And you said you live in China Grove?
Yes, I do.
Do you live in China Grove proper or?
Outside of China Grove, community of 152 called the Warrior.
Okay. What sort of licenses do you hold and how long have you held these licenses?
I have had a North Carolina broker's license since 1998, 25 years.
And have you testified as an expert witness before in a Board of Adjustment proceeding?
I have.
And what was that about?
That was a watershed case in Mooresville where my client's rights were being hampered on a watershed density averaging case that we were allowed by general statute to perform. I did testify in that as an expert witness, yes.
As part of that expert witness, did you talk about the land value, locating land and determining values in that land?
Yes.
What information did you review today in preparing for your testimony?
I reviewed the packet that was gone over by the gentleman on the second row there.
And do you believe that your testimony in this proceeding will be helpful in assisting the board to understand the facts and matters involved in this case?
Yes, I hope so.
Unless the board would like any more information upon Mr. Horton's background, we would tender him as an expert witness in real estate.
Okey doke.
Yes, Mr. D.
Motion to accept him as a expert witness on real estate. All right, all in favor? Aye. Okay. All right, good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Horton, what is the process for identifying and locating land for development that you follow?
Typically, when a client calls me, whether it be for commercial or residential, I find out where they want to go and start from there. A lot of it is local knowledge, knowing where things are, whether it be a commercial center of development, employment, gatherings, opportunities for their workers, or stuff like that.
And in this process, do you carry out due diligence on these properties?
Absolutely, yes.
How do you carry out this due diligence?
I study everything and provide that to my clients. I want to know where everything is. Roadways, where they're going to get to work, how they're going to get there, what's going to impede them on the way there, their traffic concerns.
And based on these findings, do you present them to your clients, good or bad?
Yes.
Are you familiar with Millbridge Speedway?
Yes, I am.
Do you live near the Speedway?
I live, as a crow flies, if y'all will allow me that terminology, 5.25 miles away.
And do you regularly travel past the site?
Yes, I do.
And how long have you been familiar with the property?
I was raised in Mount Ella, West Ryan High School, so we've known about it since it was built.
And should you be locating some land out there for a client, would the Speedway be something you would identify during your due diligence?
Yes. As well as Lazy Five and things like that.
So you would be certain to tell a client about the fact there's a Speedway there?
I have an obligation to tell a client.
So have you reviewed the photos of the previous sheds and the bleachers shed as it currently exists on the property?
Yes.
Based upon this review, do you have any comments based on your expert testimony as a real estate expert about the new bleachers and the new tech shed?
I'm not a safety expert. I'm not a bleacher expert, so no comment.
Do they generally exist in the same location as what the previous shed and bleacher existed?
It appears to, yes.
Do they appear to be an eyesore of any way, shape, or form that would impact adjoining real estate values?
My opinion is no.
Have you been involved in any other projects or evaluations that revolve around the motorsports industry?
Yes.
What are some of these projects?
Tower Point Business Park, where NASCAR Tech is, we sold them that land, developed the site for them. Lakeside Park, first lots to race industry were sold there in 1989 and developed out as a race support, race theme park. So a lot of experience there, yes.
And in those parks, are they, what kind of activities occur within them?
Within the business park?
Yes.
Typically retail activities. Lakeside and Talbot Point were billed as racing, race support type industries.
Any loud noises associated with those as well?
Yes.
And do those projects with the noise that they create, have they negatively impacted those property values over there?
No, they have not.
Based upon the pre-existing non-conforming aspects of the track, do you believe that its operations impact or negatively impact the surrounding properties value-wise?
No, I do not.
Do you believe that the new tech shed and new bleacher will negatively impact the surrounding property values?
I don't see a change. No, I do not.
Based upon their location and what you have seen, do you believe that they will create a significant visual impact to adjoining properties or passersby?
No.
And do you believe that based upon the current use of the property, that the new tech shed and the bleachers will be in general harmony with the area?
Yes, I'll agree with that.
And provided that the commissioners don't have any questions for Mr. Horton, that is it for him from us.
All right, any questions for Mr. Horton?
Horton, were any of the previous projects that you have involved with actual racing?
Absolutely, yes. Race teams. Oh, no, sir. Race teams is what I meant. Race support industry, the engine builders, the wind tunnels, stuff like that.
Yeah. Obviously, we don't do these all the time, so sometimes I have to catch up on. So we're talking about whether this affects the value of the surrounding properties. And you talked about the noise from the track would not affect. But I thought earlier we said that since this is pre-98, he doesn't have to follow the noise ordinances.
Well, this is speaking directly to the tech shed and the bleachers. Will those two replacement structures cause damage, significant damage to the value of adjoining or abutting properties? So this would be something that Mr. Burnett might have to come back and testify to. The tech shed and the bleachers themselves, to my knowledge, and he can certainly testify this factor, are not the items creating the noise at this property. It is the on-track activities that are well within the dirt track that has been on the site since 1998, or excuse me, since 1989 at least. So that is what we're focusing on this aspect with the tech shed and the bleachers themselves. These replacement items that replaced dilapidated structures on the property are not resulting in significant value to adjoining or abutting properties.
So is there, I assume there's some sort of amplified sound on the property?
Having been out there only once to watch a race, I personally did not find it to be too loud. Mr. Burnett can speak to that. Can speak to that further should you like him to.
What I'm talking about is their speaker system, you know, they talk through the loudspeakers to make announcements. Talk about do they have that out there?
Yes, I did personally hear that, but again, this would be something that should you like to ask more questions about that, I would suggest bringing Mr. Burnett back up about that. He'll be much more knowledgeable about it than myself.
Well, I guess my question is the amplified sound ordinance, would they not, they don't fall under that because they're pre-sports?
No, Ed, I think as to operations and the general noise ordinance, that would apply to any operations out there and any amplified sound.
All right. Any other questions for the witness? All right, thank you. Thank you for being here with us.
And the only thing that I just would like to state real quick, I believe, and Mr. Dees can, if I'm incorrect in this, I believe that I have the opportunity to potentially cross anybody who speaks, should that be necessary.
Yes, you do. And I'll explain this to everybody in the room. If you want to open it up to cross-examination, anybody in the room may ask any question you want to of the two people who just spoke. If you want to cross-examine them, they have the right to cross-examine your witnesses. Yeah, you just opened it up, so.
I asked about it. I didn't say yes or no yet. But.
Well, it's a quasi-judicial hearing and everybody's got the right to cross-examine a witness.
And again, I do want to point this out. This is about the special use permit for the tech shed and the bleachers. This is not about anything else tonight. As stated in the agenda and the report, this is not about the expansion of the property. So I would just ask and point out that any testimony related to this being a quasi-judicial hearing be limited to the special use permit for the bleachers and the tech shed.
Well, that's a good comment. And I'd like to ask our attorney about that because, I mean, we know, I wish we were all attorneys. Yeah, well, thank you. So, yeah, Jay, what is your, I mean, we all know what the issue is. We all know what the issue is. And so, and we're likely going to hear about what the issue is. And so, Jay, what are we limited to? Am I to stop conversation from those who would like to speak?
You have the leeway to accept anything you want to hear. I think what I'm hearing from the attorney is the relevant issues are the petition for the bleachers and the new stand. To that end, Shane has brought up what those issues sort of implicate, whether you can accommodate on-site parking, whether it's an expansion of the non-conforming use specifically, and whether you believe that it's or it's not an expansion of the non-conformity. But you have the leeway to hear anything you want, but with regard to your decision should only be based on relevant testimony of people who are sworn and testify as to those issues. Gotcha. But yes, you can, I can tell you my general rule is we can sift through what you don't think is relevant, but public hearings are naturally designed for people to be able to say what they want to say. But we would have to make a determination that that wasn't part of the decision.
All right, we will begin the public hearing portion of this. And first up is Brian Shaw. Brian, welcome. We're glad you're here. Well, do we need to state his address and all that? We've got it all written down here. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Brian Shaw, and I reside at 6328 Mooresville Road, Salisbury, North Carolina. And I wasn't aware that you guys have all this cool technology in here. So I brought in some old school photos.
Yeah.
Can I hand those out?
Sure, please. Jim and I can share one. We can just share one, Jim. Oh, no, we got plenty, I guess. Yeah.
Well, we'll wait and see.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, so I introduced myself. I would first like to say that Mr. Burnett's attorney had asked you to acknowledge him as an expert witness based on one of the tick marks that he listed off was that he knew the ordinances of operating a racetrack. I would say that we're all here tonight because either that didn't happen, either he wasn't aware of the ordinances of operating a racetrack, or he was aware of them and chose to ignore them. This is kind of why we're here tonight. Another thing that was said is that he'd be able to find the additional parking if the bleachers are approved, or that it didn't need additional parking, that those bleachers might not cause the need for additional parking. I would also argue that right now there is a huge parking issue. And if you look at the photos that I handed out, you'll see that there are cars parked all outside of the original footprint of the property. And so right now there's already a parking issue. So that does pertain to the bleachers and additional seating capacity. So I'll go ahead and start my speech here. There's a loose bond between the community on our stretch of Highway 150, Beechwood Road, Briggs Road, Castle Mill Lane, Evening Drive, Jeep Goodnight Road, Goldenrod Circle, Goodnight Road, June Drive, Lillian Circle, Moorhaven Drive, Patterson Road, St. James Way, and Yorkshire Farms Drive. Approximately from mid-March through mid-November, the prime seasons to be beautifying our lawns, working in our gardens, grilling on the back porch, enjoying an evening campfire, swimming in a pool, lounging in a hot tub, or taking a nice walk in unmolested woods. We endure hours at a time of the droning sound of extremely loud carts, racing from about 7:30 till 11:30 p.m. Sometimes later when special events are being held. On top of the sound of the carts, there is amplified sound. PA system is blaring so that a race announcer can be heard over the sounds of the engines. I'm here tonight because just over a year ago, another concerned neighbor told me that the track, Millbridge Speedway, had built some unpermitted structure and was having an issue with that. He then went to tell me that Millbridge Speedway was no longer able to utilize vacant grass lot adjacent to the family's property as overflow parking, and that I should contact Shane Stewart from the county if I witnessed continued use of that property. Mr. Stewart confirmed that they were not to be using that property and that Millbridge Speedway is not to extend operations beyond the original footprint from 1998. I continued to witness activity there and repeatedly notified Shane Stewart of each occurrence. Sorry for that, Shane. And Shane recommended that I notify the sheriff's department if the unpermitted activity continued. I notified the sheriff's department, but that was to no avail, as the sheriff's deputies were hired to direct traffic into the field that was not permitted to be used for parking. When I notified the sheriff's department, I was directed to communicate with the deputy on site. When I approached the deputy on site, he used a walkie-talkie to radio to Mr. Burnett, who came to check out the situation. Mr. Burnett was accompanied by Mr. Hoffman, his father-in-law. Mr. Burnett was very cordial, and we were discussing the noise the track produces and the fact that the track was not permitted to use the field for parking. Initially, we were having what I thought was a very productive conversation. We were, getting along. Mr. Burnett's a very nice guy. Until I mentioned Mr. Stewart from the county and his confirmation that the track was not able to utilize the field. At this point, Mr. Hoffman became a little belligerent and threatening with what he could do if this became an issue. In the meantime, over the last year and a half, 2 properties adjacent to the track were acquired in Mr. Hoffman's name, the track owner's father-in-law. A large portion of this property was cleared of trees and graded into additional parking with an adjoining driveway connected to the track's driveways. Again, Millbridge Speedway is not to operate outside the footprint established in 1998 and has been notified of the, and the track has been notified of this by Mr. Stewart from the Planning and Development Office. Now in my backyard, the trees between us are so thin, I can see the track, the video screen, the bright lights, and the parking lot from my back porch. It seems the already insanely loud noise has been intensified greatly as the only present obstruction for sound has been removed. You can see the photos of the property lines on those pages I handed out. You may ask, and this is what I was asked by Mr. Hoffman, why would you buy a property beside a go-kart track if you don't like the go-kart track? In 1991, when my family originally purchased the property, the go-kart track was a small, quirky, fun go-kart track. It didn't make much noise and didn't make much noise louder than a lawnmower and typically ran on Saturday afternoons. The track was actually defunct for approximately 2.5 years and was not supposed to be eligible to reopen. Now there are multiple series of racing taking place with carts approaching 100 horsepower. You would ask what kind of carts operate there. And according to the website, Millbridge Speedway website, some of the carts operate at about 100 horsepower, and these carts are powered by engines comparable to a 500cc dirt bike with no muffler. So it is extremely loud. And if you've ever had kids or grandkids with a go-kart or gone somewhere you race go-karts, different ballgame. My concern today is that the track will continue to operate lawlessly with no regard for us, their neighbors, or the community that we live in. Tonight's quasi-judicial hearing is about an unpermitted building and unpermitted bleachers. The owners of the track have been notified multiple times from the Rowan County Office of Planning and Development that they are operating in violation of county ordinances. Even as recently as this past Wednesday night, you see the pictures there, as this past Wednesday night, when under the most scrutiny from the county in preparation for this hearing, Millbridge Speedway ignored the authority of the county and continued to use the unpermitted structures and the cleared land on the adjacent property that they know they are not allowed to use. Again, see the photos. You'll see as recent as Wednesday, that cleared land that they're not supposed to be using is full of cars. The tech shed, the doors are open, the lights are on. They're not supposed to be using that building. You can see clearly in the picture, there's a man inside. And in the bleachers that are not permitted for use, you can see there are attendees sitting on the bleachers. When facing a daunting task or a large challenge, there's a saying, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer is 1 bite at a time. I'm afraid that this hearing for this unpermitted building and unpermitted bleachers is the first bite. The bleachers would be necessary to accommodate additional patrons. We've kind of covered this, but where will these folks be parking their cars? The truth is there are multiple violations taking place at Millbridge Speedway, and I think it would be in the community's best interest to apply the brakes and attempt to consider all the effects of these changes prior to approving anything. The Millbridge Speedway website says it best when it says the track has seen a lot of changes since 2011 with no end in sight. I'm all for one's ability to grow and succeed as long as the growth is done properly and does not negatively affect, as Rowan County puts it, the aesthetic quality of life in the county. The constituents of this stretch of Rowan County are begging for protection from Rowan County. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Next, Owen Crater. Welcome, Owen.
I spent 3 hours coming up with 3 minutes worth of statements, but then the restriction about no hearsay or stuff like that kind of nipped some of that down because a lot of what I had was hearsay. However, picking up some stuff I've heard from here, that Bus being an expert on speed track operations and stuff like that, that might be true, but his expertise in dealing with his neighbors in his community is pretty much zero. I tell you right now, the day that thing closes, there will be a party. Believe me. Also, someone else explains about part of this, like Brian was saying, this is just symbolic. This here disregard for any kind of process of putting up the structures with permits. It's just part of the process we've been living through. I also heard, speaking of living through, that go-karts, whatever it's supposed to be do, running maybe 10:30, 10:45. It's not hearsay. I hear it in my house, half a mile away, 11 o'clock, past 11 o'clock. Last Tuesday night, it was past 11 o'clock. So quite frankly, it's more the norm that these things run past 11 o'clock. And I'm hearing it in my house, half a mile away. Every time they do practice, it's not just a race, it's every time they do practice, it's the same car, same set of cars, whatever it is. It's the same thing as a home invasion. You got somebody, a total stranger, dictating to you the level you put your TV on, where you sleep, how well you sleep, if you sleep at all. I know he's trying to say what the noise, and it's kind of nice. I can see why he want to compartmentalize this against the negative thing. And yep, it looks pretty innocuous. Some stands that really don't add to the seating, and a building there. Well, it really doesn't add to some things. But if you look at the whole picture, the whole thing is really detrimental to the whole process of trying to live a quality life. You got someone, like I say, half a mile away, dictating to you what should be, a refuge from the world, but yet he's dictating to you in your own home, taking care of your privacy, your quality of life from this operation. And this is just symbolic of what we have to put up with. So I had a better speech, but I had to make this up since y'all discounted about everything else I had written. So, but that's what I had to say.
Thank you very much. Let's see. Well, Jeremy, you're on here, but you have your own. And is this, I can't read this name. Is it Paul? Any idea who signed up after you, Jeremy? Is this Hoffman? Is that?
Were indicated that it assigned that as well. So.
That's fine. That's fine. All right, we'll move on. Jackie Shaw. Welcome.
Thank you for allowing us this opportunity. My name is Jackie Shaw, and I own 20 acres on Mooresville Road. The address is 6330 Mooresville Road. I believe I'm the closest residence to the racetrack. For the past 30 years, there's been an up and down history regarding this go-kart track. In the early years, the track hosted go-kart races on weekends. The noise was not horrible. There were not huge lights, and there were no speakers involved. Then the track was sold to an operator who seemed to lease it to different people who ran different types of vehicles, mostly very loud. They did not fit the definition of a go-kart. They would race motorcycles, just whatever. They would just, my understanding is that they would just charge people a fee to be able to run whatever they wanted to around the track. Now that was before this operation. I'm just giving you a little bit of a history. Some of the operators had no regard for the surrounding countryside, and they would allow practice for hours on end. It would just go and go. With a race, it starts, it ends, then it starts and ends. But with practice, it just goes and goes and goes. Many times the track sat there abandoned with weeds growing up and nothing happening. And it's true, there is a history. I don't remember the year, but some of us neighbors noticed that the track had been abandoned for a period of longer than 2 years. And we attempted to use the grandfathering thing to have the track shut down permanently. That did not happen. So the racetrack, I've lost my place here. Okay, so several years ago, it seems a new owner acquired the property and began holding races. These races have become progressively louder and more frequent. Several times a year, the track hosts week-long events that involve parking and traffic problems. The operators have leased or borrowed property in the area to handle their parking issues. They have rented huge lights to shine in the parking areas during these events. And they evidently hire police to handle the traffic that is generated. Some of these races are run all day and until after midnight. And then sometimes around 12:15 or 12:30, they have a fireworks display. Okay, the racetrack operated on one parcel of land known as 6670 Mooresville Road. This area, well, we've already talked about that. It wasn't zoned. And then when zoning started, they got grandfathered in. So I'm not going to go over that. So recently it came to my attention that the track had purchased 2 adjoining tracts of land. They clear cut several acres of ground that previous to this had been dense forest. And they left orange mud that they use for a parking lot. This was not apparent from Mooresville Road or the front of the racetrack property, because the guy that owned it before has some abandoned motorhomes and trailers and cars that have been sitting there for years and years. All of that is still in place. So if you drive down Mooresville Road, you would not know that there have been drastic changes up behind all that mess. So it was my, let me see, where did I go? Okay, they left all those abandoned vehicles and an old nasty dirt driveway. But when I walked to the back of my property, I could see all the changes that had been made, especially after the leaves fell off the trees. And it was obvious that they were planning to expand their business onto the recently purchased property. New tall, bright lights have been installed, and now they run their races. Now when they run their races, the lights shine directly into my buildings, and the noise of the race vehicles and the loudspeaker boom through my walls. Any tree barrier that had been there is gone. When I called the county zoning office about this expansion, I was told that the track had not obtained zoning for the expansion and that they were operating outside of the zoning laws. I am a private citizen and do not have personal knowledge what transpired between the track, their attorneys, and the county, but I have been informed by the zoning office that the track continues to operate in violation of zoning ordinances. At this time, the track holds organized races several evenings each week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturdays. Most races do not end before 11 p.m. and often go past midnight. They also seem to allow practice at any time. And when these vehicles practice, there is very loud noise for hours at a time. Trucks, trailers, and spectators begin pouring into the track about 5 p.m. on weekdays and around, early afternoon on Saturdays. And the noise and the commotion continue nonstop until the races finally end. So it seems that the track operators have constructed a building and a set of bleachers without obtaining proper permits from the county. Again, I have no personal knowledge about these, only what I have been told and by the zoning office. And I understand that the track is here this evening to ask for permission to use these structures. The unpermitted use of these structures shows the total and complete lack of regard that the track operators have for the laws of Rowan County. But these 2 structures are nothing compared to the zoning violations that these operators have committed by purchasing real estate and converting it to use as a racetrack and/or a parking area. These are huge violations and have caused great misery for the surrounding property owners. So when you all are considering how to respond to the racetrack's requests, I would request that you give consideration to the following items, and I'll make them quick. Number 1, just remember that the track has showed no consideration to the neighbors and surrounding homes and businesses by continuing to operate illegally and against common decency with respect for others. They have been instructed not to use the expansion property, but that has not deterred them from continuing to use it. The unofficial representative, I will tell you, somebody purporting to represent the track visited me, and he told me that the track is exempt from the provisions of Chapter 14, which is known as the noise ordinance, because the track purports to be, quote, an outdoor athletic event or sports facility. The noise ordinance states in section 14.2.1 that its purpose is to, quote, preserve and promote the aesthetic quality of life in the county. In section 14.3, it defines noise as any sound which annoys or disturbs humans or which causes adverse psychological or physiological effect on humans. I can assure you that the racetrack generates this type of noise many times each week. I believe that the crafters of the county noise ordinance did not intend to exempt a motorsports racetrack that runs not just go-karts, but big, powerful vehicles of other sorts from the provisions of the noise ordinance. I believe that the noise ordinance was written to address just this sort of problem. The track representative indicated that if the track is not allowed to operate the way it wants to, that it'll make my life, quote, a living hell by operating 24/7, and there won't be anything I can do about it. Number 3, the racetrack does not benefit Rowan County or its residents. Most of the participants come from outside Rowan County, and when their races are over, those participants return to the quiet neighborhoods where they live and where their counties probably protect their quality of life. The track representative likes to talk about the NASCAR drivers who bring their children to Millbridge to race, as if this somehow benefits our county. These kids will grow up and move on to bigger and better things, but the rest of us will continue trying to live next to this nightmare. Number 4, hundreds of people pass through the racetrack each week. They are paying money for the privilege of being there. Is the county receiving sales tax or other revenue from the track? And where is the human waste going that all of these people generate? My last point, no one, and I can't imagine anyone being crazy enough to purchase my home with this mess going on next door. And yet my real estate tax assessment does not reflect the devaluation of the largest investment I've ever made in my life. This is a huge issue for me and my family, and I beg the appropriate agencies of Rowan County to protect us from the whims and the greed of this entity that has shown absolutely no respect for me, my neighbors, or the laws of Rowan County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Luann and Butch Grambo. Luann Grambo.
Hi.
He points to her. Yeah.
We are Butch and Luann Grambo, and I was told that I would have an opportunity tonight to share concerns about the racetrack. I've heard the attorney try to keep it to a very specific subject, but I'm afraid they opened a can of worms, and we all want to dig into that can of worms and let the truth be told. So my husband and I live on Lillian Circle, which is off of Goodnight Road. We're probably a couple of miles as a crow flies possibly from there. We live on a 9-acre country home. It's a big, beautiful home. It has a large deck on the back. It looks out over pasture and fields. We bought it to have a lovely, quiet country living experience. When this business reactivated, our whole quality of life was destroyed. We cannot go sit on our deck in the evening. It's so loud, you can't have a conversation. We can't have friends over on a Saturday night and have a cookout and play cornhole in the backyard. The screaming of those engines is so loud you can't even think straight. I live 2 miles I also walk my dog another mile and a half further away. And on an afternoon when they're practicing, I can hear it just as loud all that way. It is horrendous. The noise issue is totally destroying a quality of life. And I represent hundreds and hundreds of families, not just me, not just Lillian Circle, all around this whole area. This issue of noise. And I agree with what was said was this is just representative of a disregard for the quality of life here in our county and for us. You know, this business is destroying our lives. I would not buy my home today, knowing what I know about noise. It's so disruptive. And the issue of how late at night, what a joke. I can be laying in bed at 11:30, doors closed, windows closed. I can hear the screaming of those engines. I recorded it. Would you like to hear it? I got about a 30-second tape. And this is just my phone. And so it's not going to be the volume that it would be. And I don't even know if this will work, but let me see if I can even make this. This was on Wednesday night. And I'm sorry, let me try again. I turned my volume down so I wouldn't interrupt people. Okay, let's try again. I don't know. Give me a moment. It's not loud enough. I'm sorry, by the time I got the volume up, it had run past it, but the only point I wanted to make is that there must be some kind of noise rules, something about sound, about your quality of life being destroyed by sound. And this business is destroying our quality of life. And we can't enjoy the beautiful country setting that we have when it's running, and it runs a lot. It runs in the afternoons, it runs in the evenings. I've heard it on Sunday afternoon as well. So just wanted to give a perspective from just a landowner. I don't know how many families live out there, but we're one of hundreds of them.
Thank you, Ms. Grambo. Rob Robertson and Barb. Fine.
My name is Rob Roberson. I live at 6250 Mooresville Road.
Does that mic come out of that stand? There you go.
Are we working?
Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Rob Roberson. I live at 6250 Mooresville Road, which is about maybe almost a half a mile from the track. When they were talking about this track running a few nights a week, when they do not have races that are sanctioned by them that are running any other time, this track can be rented out for practice or whatever somebody wants to do there. From early in the morning till late at night. When they have these races, they used to have them with little 5 horsepower engines that you might be able to pump 15 horsepower out of. Sounds like a lawnmower. No problem at all. Never was a problem. These outlaw sprint cars that they have are running engines kind of like the Legend series used to run at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Same motors. It sounds like millions of angry bees coming through your house at all hours of the day and night. You cannot sleep when these bees or these little go-karts are running around this racetrack. It doesn't matter how well insulated your house is, how well insulated your windows are. You cannot sleep
I cannot have a conversation with my wife in my house because of the sound of these things. I would suggest you commissioners go out at some point and listen to this racetrack. I will invite you all to my house. We can have coffee and tea and crumpets and listen to these go-karts. They are race cars. They are not go-karts. These are race cars. And that's about all I have to say about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Roberson. All right, that's all we have signed up for. Anything you want to talk about, council? Yeah, sure, take your time. EDC, you can go out and get pizza or breakfast, one of the two.
The only thing that we would point out for some of these items that have been passed up before you and videos and items, Mr. Burnett is stating that those are not happening at those times. So it's when he says that it's 10:30 is when they do their best to be done with, that is the time that he has testified as the fact that they as a track do their best to be done with. I would just like to say this, the previous comments were not in any way, shape, or form trying to prevent the neighbors or public from speaking out tonight. It is just pointed to the fact that this is a quasi-judicial hearing focused on the special use permit for the tech shed and the bleachers. The other items that are being brought up will fall under another item that they can speak to should they so desire to. But we would object just to any testimony that is considered that is not directly related to the special use permit in this case. If you have any other questions for Mr. Burnett, please let us know and we can answer those. Otherwise, thank y'all.
Thank you, council. All right, do we have anyone else that plans to speak? It's been sworn in. Anyone else? All right, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. And then commissioners will have discussion. You sit up, that usually means you got something to say.
Hold my comments till we get going.
All right. So we all understand why we're here, and that is for two simple issues. But it's hard to divorce that issue from what we know the bigger issues are. I was out there last week and met with the applicant and his wife. Really, really nice folks. They're working hard to clean that place up. I get all that. We are certainly, all five of us, pro-business. Before I believe it was, if it was Tuesday or Wednesday. Do you remember? Do you remember? I think it was Wednesday. So in the interest of full disclosure, I'd contacted the Shaws because I've been contacted. And so I went and spoke with the Shaws. I went and spoke with Jeremy and met he and his wife and was there with them. They showed me around. I was there for probably 45 minutes, I would guess. So I don't have any issues, with them in that setting. I went back to the office. I was invited to come back out that night to hear what was going on for myself. And so I came back out there around 9 o'clock on Wednesday night and stood in the backyard of Brian Shaw's home next door. And I don't think I was prepared for what I heard. Whatever I thought I would hear, it was 10 times worse. And that's not what we're here to talk about. But it's all linked. And so in the end, what and so I left there and I actually went to the race. I owe you $15. No one took my money because it was 9:30. So I do owe you $15. No one was at the gate. So I went in and parked, and I got to tell you, it's a great crowd. You told me you're attracting a good crowd, and it looked like a good crowd. I was surprised to see all of the trucks and the race trailers lined up in an area that I think we had sent a notice of violation on that was not to be used. That surprised me. I was not surprised at the noise when I was there. I was surprised when I got home and went in the bathroom that I was covered in dust. That has nothing to do with anything. I was standing probably at turn 4, and it was exhilarating. It was cool to watch. I realized that I couldn't drive a sports car at those speeds, but I told the applicant and his wife that what I want to see happen is for the community and you guys to come together to come up with some type of middle ground on this. Someone mentioned to me, well, folks just want to close us down, and I've not heard anybody say that. I've had people call me today. Folks who are into racing who say they value that facility, but I wrote down notes during that call. They said that certainly it's getting bigger and better for them, but bigger and worse for us. They said it's just gotten worse and worse. The PA system, they said they sit in their house with the doors and windows closed and the TV on, and they can hear every word coming from the track. And she acknowledged that the track was there first. And I think that this is everyone's feeling, but they weren't doing this. She said she never wanted to complain because she said she and her husband supports racing, but she just didn't know it would turn into this. And so she couldn't be here tonight, but she wanted to call me about that. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to play just so the public can understand. And then I'm going to tell you what I would like us to do. So we're not against this. We got to figure out, I think I told the applicant that the folks on this board, we're very pro-business and we are very pro private property rights. But private property rights goes for everybody. When your exercise of private property rights begin to infringe on the private property rights of others, then we begin to have a problem. And I've also said that as our community begins to grow like it is, we're going to have more and more of this. So we had a realtor who is an expert say that he, and we expect this, no disrespect, but he wouldn't bring someone that would say that it would affect. So we knew what that would be. And again, no disrespect for that, but I looked at Brian at 9:30 on Wednesday night and I said, why do you still live here? You couldn't pay me to live next door. It was so loud that we had to scream back and forth at each other. It was really remarkable. So what do? I don't know what the answer is. We could, what council wants us to do tonight is to approve the two issues at hand and then go on to fight the next ones. And I'm inclined to say no. What I want to see happen is that the parties come together and you guys figure out, frankly, outside of us, how there's going to be some type of middle ground on this. Council said that, well, we don't go past a certain time, when the applicant told me that they do at times go past. And so I understand the mechanics of how these races work. There's kids that are there. The kids go first because they got to get home and get to bed and got school the next day, right? So we save the adults for racing later because the adults can stay up late. I mean, I get all of that. But when you add it all up, that race, that was going around 9:30. And my last video was as I walked away, and it was 10:42 in the evening. I can't imagine having kids in my house and having that. And the most remarkable thing to me was I really turned away from the track and tried to concentrate on the community in my ears, and just had this sense that this is pouring out miles from here. It seemed to reverberate back from miles away. I really was, and I know I'm disappointing you. I know I'm making you mad probably. I'm giving you my heart here and saying I had no idea how loud this was. Now, do we want to stop that? No, I mean, we value NASCAR, we value racing, we value athletics, we value business, we value all of this. But there's got to be some middle ground, and I don't know what that is. Y'all are going to have to figure this out. For myself, I'm not approving anything, nothing, until the parties can come together to agree. And what does that look like? I don't know. It may look like it's going to be certain nights, and it's going to be a certain time of night, and it doesn't go beyond that. And I don't care if it rained. I don't care if you got extra folks showed up. If the agreement is at a certain time, and then you can't go past that. We don't want to crush this. We didn't want this to come before us. This is a nightmare for us. Let me be honest, this is a nightmare. Anytime we have two citizens who are opposed to one another in activities, and now throw on top of that thousands of fans that really enjoy that. And I got to tell you, I enjoyed being there. And I thought it was a remarkable business that was going on there. But at the same time, I just almost wept for these families around there with kids, and thought, how in the world do they even sleep at night? So we got 3 other commissioners here to talk. My inclination is to table this, to not take a vote on it. I know we are, so that folks understand what we're here doing. We are only, council is right. We are only here to talk about giving the applicant the opportunity to apply to the board for building permits, inspections, and permits to operate the shed and the new bleachers. And so in a sense, this other stuff doesn't have anything to do with that, but we all know it's tied together. And so from my perspective, I will not vote to approve these, and I'll let these others speak, but we're gonna have to come up with some middle ground, because it seems to be win-win-win all on one side and lose-lose-lose on the other. And we got to figure out, I told the applicant, until everyone's feeling some pain here, it's usually not a good decision. And so if you've got to cut your hours back and agree on a few nights a week and that's it, then that's what we can do. And you guys are going to have to do that. So that's where I stand on that.
Mr. Chairman, I think I agree with your sentiment there. I mean, obviously, if citizens can work things out, usually better than the government telling people what to do. I mean, I think there's some issues here, even approving this with the parking and trying to stay within inside the original footprint. But even, denying that, I mean, they could tear that down and still operate inside that footprint. So I think looking down the road and trying to, both sides trying to find what's best for each other. If we want to give them a chance to try to work some things out, I think that's fine with me. I think being able to do that, citizens coming together and being good neighbors with each other, and I know there's a lot of sounds like there's a lot of tension between the groups. It's been going on for a while, so I know it's probably not going to be an easy task. But I'm also willing to table it until give them a chance to try to work it out.
Mr. Chairman, I'm always one who believes in property rights. But I also have a problem anytime, especially somebody that comes here and asks to be approved as an expert in their background, and they ignore the permits that are required by the county for buildings and any other thing that's going on, and ignoring letters from us that talk about expanded parking or anything. I know we do a lot of things and we maybe don't think about what the county requires, but any business person that is going to expand or continue to do business and has expanded in any way, generally tries to find out what's required by the county. So I have issues with that. We have a noise ordinance that is at the center of all of this, and I don't have the answers to all of this either.
I'm also willing to table this and see if we can work something out before we have to make a drastic decision one way or the other on these things. Well, Mr. Chairman, as usual, I got a little different approach than y'all do. That seems to be a common theme with me, but I'm upset with the fact that somebody that's supposed to be a racetrack expert doesn't know you got to get a permit to put up a building. I've been in construction 40 years, and the first thing I'd ask somebody that tells me, oh, I can build your building without a permit, I'll be like, what happens when somebody gets hurt or what happens when it falls down? So to me, somebody that's supposed to be all that and doesn't know that you got to draw a permit to have a dwelling to bring people in and out of. I know why he didn't get the permit, because the power was already there. He didn't have to. That's the whole reason he didn't get one. So I'm gonna agree with you that we need to table this, but I also want us to have restrictions on him using either one of these buildings here, since they're not in compliance. And maybe that'll expedite getting something done for these citizens out here. If he can't use these buildings, then he'll get off his can and get this problem worked out. We don't give him an incentive to do something. He'll just do business as usual. And that's what's going to happen. Then we're going to talk to the sheriff too, want to know why, if he's hiring deputies to be out there working and they see these violations, why they're not doing something about it. I think that needs to be addressed too. I'm done.
I just have one question for county attorney, and it's back to the noise ordinance issue, because I still have some confusion about it. I've read some about it. I've heard 11 o'clock thrown around. The applicant himself talked to me about some decibels, which he himself had measured. Something that I read was about, I know that because they're using amplification, that there's an exemption there because of sporting event, right? So so there's amplification, and then I don't know that there's any. Anyway, I'll let you go.
I think, you know, Ed and Shane are here, but it's my understanding that it's just the amplified sound. It's just the speaker sound. Is that right, Ed? So it's just the speaker amplified sound.
And not the vehicle sound.
No, sir. As it's written now, yeah.
So they can be as loud as they want to be.
The sheriff's office is the one that's tasked with enforcement of that particular noise ordinance. So it would be up to them.
That particular meaning.
The chapter 14, the unreasonable amplified sound. And I think Jay is right. The general assumption has been is that it's related to the loudspeakers and stereos and music or that kind of thing. It is not related to the vehicle noise. And so what I think we've heard is that it's generally related to the cars. It's not the loudspeakers. And I think the belief has been in the past is that it does enjoy some protection as a recreation or sporting event. But again, the ordinance is tasked with enforcement by the sheriff's office, not our staff. The commission's role in approving deviations from that ordinance are permits to exceed, and they're for the parties, the bands, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know if I helped or confused matters either way, but the noise standards that we have do not address what we're talking about here tonight, in my opinion.
So including a racetrack, someone could have some type of noise producing, non-conforming, grandfathered in business that is at 1,000 decibels. I mean, I know that's a ridiculous statement, but there's nothing that neighbors can do.
Well,
If you want us, if, I think that we're talking about some hypotheticals that we probably should address before we get more confused with what it applies to. So if you want us
Well, it's a
to
simple.
take that, if you want us to take that and try
No,
to
it's
give
just
some
a
sort of
sim-
succinct, but
No, the simple question is, does the county have any interest or any authority in any decibel level?
the public,
What?
Dealing with Reaper's realm.
it's chapter 14.
You're saying amplified sound would fall under the ordinance, but that's not really the problem because there's not a lot of amplified sound. It's the cars go around circles,
Right.
which is not under the ordinance.
Right.
Well, now I've had folks talk to me about the amplified sound, but it appears that in the ordinance, it excludes that because it is a sporting event. And because I mean, you've got a football game going on out at West Rowan, you know, they want to be able to.
And I think there's language, it's sustained. I can't remember the exact language, but isn't it sort of sustained for a period of time? And I think that PA systems in football games and sporting events, you don't really have that sustained amplification unless they were playing music during a race or something like that. But no, not just for the PA system announcing races.
All right. We are well into the night and we have others. We don't want to cut this short. I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to table this. Number one, you need to follow the restrictions that these facilities are not to be used until there's some type of agreement struck. And then we would ask you, and I don't know how you're going to do that, but reach out, you know, to some folks, some neighbors, and get together and figure out what you guys can do to come to some type of middle ground. Okay.
I'll second that.
And the only comment that I'll make is because we've closed the public hearing and you're delaying a decision that we shouldn't talk to anyone with regard to any additional information related to the subject matter until you come back and.
Yeah, so don't call us. Yes. All right, have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Have another public hearing.
Shane? Yours is quick though, isn't it?
Only hope.
All right, so we have 12 properties that either all or a portion have been released by the town of Rockwell through the ETJ release, generally following the eastern side of Troxler Size and Johnson Dairy Road. And an update from our planning board meeting, because it was 2 months ago, the town council of Rockwell has finalized that decision. So on March 13th of this year, this section has been released. And if you look at the vicinity map here, the portions we're talking about are outlined in red here along Troxler side.
Hang on, Shane, hang on.
Could y'all, yeah, there you go. Yeah, just step out. Sorry about that. All right, thank you.
Shipton Loop and a little portion of 52 and also Johnson Dairy Road. So I'll try to buzz through this pretty quick. The area you see on the left-hand side, this is the current Rockwell ETJ. This was the former that's now been released. This is the light yellow area is current RA for the county. And the crosshatch area here is a proposed zoning designation on a portion of these parcels. Notice the bold black lines are property lines. So here are the parcels involved and the property owners, and anything that referenced Rockwell zoning, that's now former, proposed. Interestingly enough, they had the same nomenclature of RA. It's residential, agricultural there. And we pick up some improvements, whatever's within this location here. So primarily on this section of Troxler or farm buildings or just vacant land. Continuing down the point on Sides Road, in the next slide, we're going down this section here to 52, Shipton Loop. All that's proposed RA as well. This is municipal limits. And ETJ here, RA, same designation. You see on the far right, the improvements, single family dwellings, manufactured homes, and undeveloped lots. And the only area, I guess some little difference here would be Johnson Dairy. As we come down to this section here, beginning at the 100 block, on the upper end, the Jones property, we're proposing rural ag. Continuing that, we do have two tracks, 370, parcel 70 and 75. This contains currently a trucking operation, have a garage, used to be Big O's garage repair. And now that's a base of operations for a small trucking facility. And below is the Gold Hill Family Medical Practice. Both of those staff proposed as neighborhood business. A little different. They're being brought into the zoning designation, so it's going to be a little different viewpoint. We felt that makes the most sense as a small step towards, again, compliance, but not zoning as CDI. Got a section here that's undeveloped that's part of the Gold Hill Wood Products, Robbins Wood Preserver operation. Undeveloped, but we think that should be best RA. And the frontage we're proposing zone industrial. So didn't get the opportunity to determine what the zoning would be back in 98. So I tend to think if the back half's industrial, we would have zoned the whole thing industrial in the front. So that's what we propose here. And I show all the improvements here. I'll just skip through that for the sake of time. The land use plan is kind of difficult to apply because it was not in the jurisdiction, but I think the planning board done a really good job of trying to organize a response for the board's consideration here. And that's offered on an upcoming slide. Didn't get any, well, we did get one phone call from the second set of letters that went out, but notified all the property owners and those adjacent within 100 feet and posted 3 different signs twice. One person showed up at the planning board meeting and nobody was opposed. The planning board recommended approval unanimously and offer the following statement for consideration. Any questions?
This is so they won't have no ETJ anywhere after this?
That is just on these little slivers. And I jumped right past that. The point of this too was to have the jurisdiction follow the center line of the road. Definitely confusing when it reaches out into obscurity. It's good if it follows a parcel boundary, but in a lot of cases, these were just a random dimension that left confusion for both staff of Rockwell, the county, and the property owners. So that the town elected to rescind those to help out the property owners and just snap it with the road.
That big solar farm will still be in their ETJ.
That is correct. That's here. Yeah, it's just going to follow the road boundary all the way down. And we're dealing with the eastern and northern in some locations, properties.
Any questions for Shane? All right, then we will conduct a public hearing. Is there anyone still here that would like to speak to this? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. I have 3 items to offer for a statement of reasonableness. Z01-2, I make this form of motion. It's reasonable, appropriate, and necessary to meet the development needs of Rowan County not previously envisioned by the East Land Use Plan based on the following. One, at the time of adoption, the East Rowan Land Use Plan, the parcels in question were part of the Rockwell ETJ. Two, based on comparison uses between Rowan and Rockwell, the zoning uses are consistent. And three, the boundaries would run concurrent with state roads per North Carolina General Statute 160D 202E, and the process and evaluation is consistent with the county's obligation under North Carolina General Statute 160D 202H. Make that in the form of a motion. Second. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. We have a motion then to approve the Rockwell ETJ release Z01-23 in a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Thank you. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Ed. Yeah. You got, oh, have you all been here the whole time? Oh, mercy sakes.
We got back in time.
Sorry.
Quite all right. Quite all right.
Thank you. Thank you for sticking it out, guys.
Tough work you have to do. It's all.
Hey, Scott, at least you don't live in, I don't know, Asheville, Greensboro,
You got a short
Knoxville,
commute.
wherever you used to live. Parts unknown.
Short commute tonight. Hey, before we talk about the incentive policy revisions, I've been wanting to do something for a while, and that's to give you this recognition that you receive from Trade and Industry Development Magazine. It's a magazine for the corporate site selection community, and they recognized us for our Macy's project as one of 15 projects in the country last year for its impact on the community. It's called their CC Award, or for Community Impact. And again, only 15 communities or projects across the country receive one of these, and this is recognizing your important role in making the Macy's project possible. So
Do we all need to come out front and get a picture? No. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, we did, didn't we? Yeah.
all right, good. Okay, so now let me get on to the incentive policy revisions. I just want to kind of tee it up and let Scott go into some of the details. But as you know, you've had a policy since 2005 that established a framework for considering incentive requests. And we've had some discussions recently with all the growth and success that we're having about revisiting our incentive policies. And we were asked to use our experience and expertise to draft something for your consideration. And we did that in conversation with many of you, with other counties around us to see what their practices are and how we might be most competitive. And we came up with a policy revision that we would like you to consider tonight. We believe that it provides us an extra, I guess, tool for consideration of incentives to allow for some consideration of things that we haven't in the past, but still keeps us very competitive in terms of our ability to win projects. So I'm going to let Scott come up now and walk you through it, and then we'll answer any questions you might have. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Rod.
As Rod was saying, and as the board is aware, there's been a policy in place since 2005. And it's only been amended once in that time. That was back in 2009. And it was just a minor amendment, just basically requiring any companies receiving county incentives to comply with the Federal Immigration and Control Act of 1986. Otherwise, the policy has stayed the same that whole time. But as Rod said, it established a framework to consider incentives for companies looking to locate in Rowan County or existing companies seeking to expand in Rowan County. The current policy, as you know, focuses on investment. That's the primary goal. It established minimum amounts of investment to determine eligibility for 3 different grant levels. And depending on that grant level that they qualify for, you could get up to a 5-year grant equivalent to anywhere from 75 to 85% of the value of the new taxes paid on the project. So these are the current tiers now. Level 1, as you see, pays out at 75% of the equal to 75% of the tax value. Level 2 is 50 million threshold, 80% payout, and then level 3 goes up to 85% of the value of the new taxes paid. So just to give a brief example, if a company were to come here and propose to invest $60 million in the construction of a new facility, they would qualify for a level 2 grant, 80% of the new taxes paid. And based on the current tax rate, that would be the equivalent of $1.5 million paid out in installments over 5 years. So while we realize that the investment amount is certainly important, this proposed policy revision we're talking about would implement a scoring system to determine if you're eligible for incentives and what those grant levels would be. So this scoring system would weigh the following factors: the amount of the investment, the number of new jobs created, the average salary of those new jobs, whether or not the employer provides health insurance and to what level do they pay the premium for the employees, and also the industry sector, what is the type of business they're bringing to Rowan County. And with the scoring system, of course, each grant level would require a certain number of points to get to level 1 or level 2 or level 3. And also to better reward our existing companies, our existing employers in Rowan County, they would be awarded an additional point just for being here in Rowan County already. And also another major change in this policy is a reduction in the grant level's percentage value. Right now, the current policy has a maximum of 85% of the value of the new taxes. Under this proposed policy, the maximum would be 50% of the value of the new taxes paid. So a 35% difference. Here are the categories with the minimum points needed. Level 1, 3 to 5 points, paying 40%. Level 2 would pay 45, and then the top would be level 3, which is 50% of the value of the new taxes. And to give an example of that, and of course you need more details because you're weighing more factors. In this case, it would be an advanced manufacturer proposing to come to Rowan County, invest $60 million, just like that first example, into the construction of this new facility. They would get a point for being an advanced manufacturer, 2 points for the investment level, 1 point for 100 new jobs. And in this instance, they would pay an average salary equivalent to what is the county average of $50,000. That would give them a point. And they would get 1 more point for paying their employees monthly health insurance premium. So that would get them 6 total points. And in this case, they would qualify for a level 2 grant, which would be 45% of the new taxes paid. So that would be about $888,000. And there's where you really see the difference. That's a difference of about nearly $700,000 between this proposed policy change and what the current policy says about a level 2 grant. And just to back up for a minute, I mentioned the average county wage, and that is a number it's what the Department of Commerce issues every year for each of the 100 counties in North Carolina. They pull this data from Department of Commerce, the Labor and Economic Analysis Division. So again, there's an average salary for each county each year, and that's what the state uses to determine eligibility for incentives. We would use that same number, so that number would change each year. This past year, it went up about $2,000. But again, that's what we would base that average wage points factor on. Also, excuse me, in addition to those changes, we would classify the following on your screen as targeted industries, those that would receive that 1 point that was mentioned earlier. They are advanced manufacturing, life sciences and healthcare, distribution, financial and professional services, and information technology. One other note is under this policy, spec projects, spec buildings would not be eligible for incentives. We'd have to have jobs as part of the equation to be brought to your attention for incentives and your consideration for incentives. And one other thing we'd ask of the board is we've got 3 projects we've been working on for the past year. We've had active negotiations with them regarding incentives. They are 3 projects that could have a lot of impact on Rowan County. We would just ask if the board were to approve this new policy, that they would consider these 3 projects if they were brought to your attention under the old policy, just because we've been talking that long about it. I'm not saying they'll get here, but if they do, just want to make the board aware of that. They are Project Black Nickel, Project Puma, and Project Cork. So in the end, EDC is respectfully asking the board to consider these changes to the policy after the public hearing is held. And that is pretty much it. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Limit the current policy to those three.
That's correct, sir. Just the ones we've been talking about for the past year. And I'm asking the board to vote on just to consider that if it comes to your attention in the future.
People when they're trying to.
Right. Oh, and Mr. Chairman, I know there was something we talked about before the meeting regarding the wage factor. Did you want to address that, or do you want me to bring that up?
Yeah, so first of all, I wanted to say I appreciate Rod and Scott's time. Jim and I have been meeting with them for months and months on this. And really the driving force behind this is the fact that when I can only speak for us, when we came into office in 2014, I know we began to try to attract folks here, and we even had some land over in Granite Quarry in a industrial park that we had a broker developer go out across the whole East Coast and say, if you'd come here and build a spec building, we'll give you the land to do it. I mean, we were desperate to see something happen, and we did get finally a building built, but it took a couple of years to find someone to say yes. And so now, as we are retooled and our economic development team is really rolling pretty fast and hard, we're talking about now somewhere in the area of 20 to 25 million square feet that is looking at Rowan County right now. And so there's a lot of reasons for that, and it's location, it's amenities, it's all of it that we've talked about. I don't need to go over that. But that type of attention now, there's articles being written, whether it's in the Charlotte, what was the Charlotte Business Journal about, Rowan County now is really a center of attention. The question becomes, do we continue to give it away? So we don't know how the market will react to this. But what we do know is that if we've got a lot of folks coming our way, and they really like our location, and they like our workforce, and they like our colleges, and they like Duke Energy, and they like water availability and infrastructure availability and on and parks and all that, on and on and on, then how about if we cut back on the incentive? And the fact is, if folks move here, we are going to have a need for additional revenue available to the county for infrastructure improvement. And so we, through the counsel of these two capable guys, have come up, they came up with this, and we're going to see how this goes. One thing that Scott and I talked about even today as I was rereading this was the issue of average wage. And I've spoken to some other communities, and one thing that's real important, and I agree on, is they won't give any incentive whatsoever if the average wage, if the wage of the new employer or prospect is below the community's average wage. And the reason that's important for us is because when we are competing for a job with other communities, whether it's either in North Carolina or across the region or across the world for that matter, North Carolina government, Department of Commerce will not contribute dollars to attract business to our community if the wages are below our average wage. So, and it's obviously the same for every county. So counties I've spoken with have two things to say about that. One, why would we want to attract folks here and lower our average wage? And number two, if we're going to bring a company here that is paying below our average wage, we're not going to get money from the state to help on that. And so it forces the community to be more aggressive. And so we're the one that has to throw out more incentive. So if you, commissioners, if you look at the last page, average wage, our point system, we had under 90% of average. If the wage that they were paying was under 90%, then they got 0 points. If they were paying 90 to 110% of the average wage, we gave them 1 point. Anything over 110% of county average wage, we gave 2 points. I would like us to consider changing that to anything under the county average wage gets 0 points. Anything from 100 to 110% gets 1 point, and over 110% remains the 2 points. That really encourages us. It shows up, and in the end, with what level they end up getting. And so as we talk through this, then I'd like for us to consider that. It'll essentially take 1 point out of the mix if they're under 100% of our current wage. But now that doesn't mean that we, you know, in our current incentive policy, we have shown that we'll go out and go after a really good project. We did that with Macy's. We did that with Chewy. And it doesn't mean that if there's $1 billion project that we won't want to step outside of this. But this would be our published, so folks would know what they're looking at with Rowan County, and this will give us the dollars we need to invest in our community in a better way. Anything?
No, you know, that changed. Because I hadn't said it a while, but thank you guys for doing all the job that you do.
I'd like to move that we accept them, Rod and Scott, both as expert witnesses today.
Oh, boy.
I think, you know, I'd like an opportunity to cross-examine myself.
I think Craig and I can say that since the time we've been here, you know, things have changed definitely in your office and organization. Both of you guys have been part of that. We appreciate what you've done and where you've helped move our county. And I thank our commissioners here for the things that they've been able to help with over the years. You know, I think it's a good place when we can change our policy because we become a more valuable commodity to the business community than we were several years ago. And I think to the point of what Greg had talked about a couple meetings ago, you know, we need the businesses here because we bring in more revenue from them than what we spend on for homes. And so, you know, with reval that's going on, you know, bringing these businesses in helps us to balance that out. And, you know, I think it just shows with the value, the amount that the value of homes that went up in our county is that people want to move here. People are moving here. I can't remember. I remember I sent you something the other day. It was like, since the beginning of the pandemic, it was like 300 people a week are moving to North Carolina right now. And so I think we're in a good spot. I'm glad that we're doing this because I know none of us want to give out incentives, but we got to do it. And it's always been I guess, a thorn in the side of conservative Republicans are the incentives, but, anytime that we can scale them back and show it, because I really think it shows that, we're, sometimes maybe we devalue where we've been before in this county, but I think we're now seeing how valuable a place we are. Other people are seeing that. They're trying to move here. And so, I think it's a really positive sign. I'm glad to see it. And I'm just glad to be a very, very, very small part of it.
I'm good. Make your motion to amend this thing.
I'll say in 10 seconds, believe it or not, and I'll attribute this to her because she stopped it. I heard this from Carla Foster, which is not Carla Foster now, but she said in some meeting, I don't know where I was, but she says, for a long time, Rowan has thought of itself as a cheap date. And we are not that. We are valuable. And this shows that we have value. And so we're gonna make some changes, and we'll see what happens. Thank you guys for going along with us. Jim, anything?
I'm like Craig, I'm good.
All right.
Unconscious.
All right. I'll make a motion that with those changes we make, and that, well, we need to have a public hearing. Yeah. All right. We'll open the floor to a public hearing, see if there's anyone that would like to speak. All right. If not, we'll close the public hearing. With that one change, do we have a motion to approve the new public incentive policy? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Make this as quick as I can unless you guys have questions. You just stop me, okay?
Could we do it at the next meeting?
We can if you want to.
All right, let's do that. Motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor, say aye.